Must be 2 weeks.
All right, I think you're ready to go.
Yeah, no, we'll bring it up. Yeah, I to be honest, yeah. But yeah, I might mention that later. But I will accommodate it. Yeah, cool, thank you. Yes.
So just need to do that and do this song.
Yeah, at the end,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, no worries.
All right, you're good to go.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kay.
I think
Take care, everyone.
Right, guys, it's right on time. We'll start the meeting. Welcome. Welcome to the team that are on Zoom. I see Gary, you got the mic. I see you going like this.
I hope not.
Okay. This meeting has been held on Summer Room in the Wahanga Centre, Texas Street, Marlborough, and via audio-visual conference. All members participating via the audio-visual conference will count for the purpose of the meeting quorum in accordance with clause 25B of Schedule 7 of the Local Government Act 2002. The meeting will be live streamed and will be available to view on our YouTube channel. Just before we go to the apologies, there's going to be a slight change around in the agenda. Donald Query won't be addressing us in public participation, but he's going to talk to the voting issue when it comes up on the agenda. It's because there's going to be a lot of questions around it, and I want him here to answer, to be able to answer those questions. And secondly, when Wellington Water arrive at 1 o'clock, they want to discuss their agenda items because they have to get away pretty rapidly. Okay, so apologies. Do we have any apologies? Alistair.
Yeah, Rebecca's put her apologies in.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, look, I'm currently having COVID, so if I do have to leave, I do apologise. I'm not feeling very well, but I'm trying to be here for this meeting.
Thank you. So I'd like to move to accept those apologies. Alistair and Owen. Would you second that? Thank you. All in favour? All right. Karen, right, do we have any conflicts of interest? No, moving on. Public participation. Now, I haven't heard from Sarah Donaldson or John Booth, but Alice, she said that they may not be able to turn in, is that right?
If I could say I understand that Mr. Booth was not going to turn up. Sarah was, but Sarah apparently has a family emergency, so that's as much as I know.
I know, and I've explained about Donald. So, right, Aidan, you're next on the list. You know the rules. 5 minutes. We'll give you an indication of 4, so we can ask you some questions. It's up to you.
Thanks very much, Jeppy. And thanks for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Sorry I don't have a camera. My device is not up to speed for a camera while I'm on the road, but I'll just make do with what I've got, if that's okay. Firstly, I'd just like to say that it's great to see in the agenda that detailed report that's been submitted today by Stefan and his team on the Hinakura Road. That's got a large amount of information, which is great to see. Thank you. Over the last few weeks, I've spoken to a number of Hinakura residents who are frustrated, angry, and have been very emotional about the situation that they are in out in the Hinakura Valley there. The well-being of 70 or so residents in Hinakura has significantly been affected with that road slipping out and the added extra 2 hours it now takes to get to Martinborough, from the mothers that used to drop their children in at daycare in Martinborough while they worked in their businesses, the children who can't travel to school every day, and the sports teams, etc., that the children or the adults now can no longer participate in. Added along with the economic costs to the farms and the businesses for those stock trucks, extra time on the Admiral Road, the fuel trucks, and the issues to get deliveries along with the mail and all those other supplies that the farming businesses in the Hinakura Valley rely on, essentially coming out of Martinborough. Also, there's the Martinborough businesses in town, the garages, rural supplies, PGG Righties, P&K, etc. They will be suffering economically as well from the fact that the residents are no longer able to access Martinborough as quickly as they have in the past. From council's rating information, I had a look and saw, and there was only 10 properties or farms in the Hinakura Valley that I had a look at, but 10 properties or farms are covering 15,000 hectares of land out there, and those 10 properties are paying approximately 151,000 in rates per annum across those 10 properties to council. And I know that amount is probably is quite small in the context of the rates intake to council, but I think it's significant in that that's a dollar value. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Don McQuarrie provided his proposal to the residents meeting there in the supper room, and his proposal was to open up an immediate access for four-wheel drives over his and the Hancock's properties, and he had provided costings and worked out costs of providing that immediate access, and that figure was less than what the annual rates intake from those 10 Hinakura properties is. For the wellbeing factors, the economic factors to those Hinakura residents and the businesses out at Hinakura, can you, and I know you're looking at that, can you please approve the funding so that the immediate progress towards reopening access to Hinakura can commence as soon as possible, please? And the last point that I'd just like to ask is, can the Assets and Services Committee, and then secondly the whole council, if necessary, are they able to hold extraordinary meetings going forward with regards to the Hinakura issue, so that once information is received from engineers, consultants, GWRC, etc., once that information is received, is it able to be acted upon urgently and approvals given with urgency, so that action can be expedited for the sake of that of our Hinakura community? I think if that's able to be done, that will provide further reassurance to the community from council that the council is doing everything that they can to open that access up. Thanks so much for that, Jeppy.
Okay, cheers. Now, questions? Anyone? Brenda?
So, Aidan, it's Brenda here. With regards to this proposed solution, is that just an interim solution until the more permanent solution is obtained?
From what I understand, the solution that Don McQuarrie has proposed is to provide four-wheel drive access for small vehicles, i.e. four-wheel drives, into the Hinakura Valley. There'll be no way that large stock trucks or fuel trucks or heavy motor vehicles will be able to use that access. They'll still have to go via the Admiral. But and I understand that access that is proposed by Don McQuarrie will be will continue to provide access for the residents while a long-term solution to rebuild the road into Hinakura is occurring. Did that answer your question, Brenda?
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Aidan.
Brenda, all that will be in discussion later on. So, but you have a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aidan, for your participation and just for your really good overview. I think what you were talking about with regards to the extraordinary meetings had actually been brought up in the original meeting and had already been said that we could look at that. So I believe that was already the case, but I can understand. I guess, are you bringing it up then now again, just so it goes on with the Assets and Services Committee, or?
Yes, I just brought it up today because today's a full committee meeting. The meeting 2 weeks ago was a residents' meeting, and while there was councillors and committee members present, it wasn't a formal committee council meeting.
Okay, yes, no, thanks for that clarification. I just I wasn't quite clear on that, so thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
Cheers.
Your points will be addressed when we discuss the Federalist. So, thank you.
Sorry, I just because we won't have an action for that, so we're discussing it. Just to advise that we are doing exactly that. So tomorrow, we will have an extraordinary meeting of council. We will be able to take these recommendations, and council will be able to formally make a decision regarding these recommendations. So you can't go much faster than that.
Oh, that's great. Thanks a lot for that, Harry. I wasn't aware, but that's awesome that that's been expedited and progress that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Aidan, and well,
So
I just acknowledging I'm here.
I just a general wave of the hand with the right. Well, the action from public participation will be dealt with later on, so we'll move on to A5, which is the extraordinary business. We have none. So now we are A6, which is minutes from previous meetings. Right, would someone like to move that we receive these minutes, please? And I'll start. We're all in favour? Aye. Is there any corrections or alterations? No? All good. So someone like to move that they are correct. Alex and Garrett, I'll see you put your hand up there. We're all in favour of that. Cheers, moving on. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, right. We're going to have a little bit of a change around. We are anticipating relative water will be here at once, so we'll move to B2, the water race. Machine, get it up. We want here, I'd like to someone to move. We received the combined district plan approval for water waste management report. I'll move it. Second, please. Alistair, we're all in favour. Right. Right. I will ask Councillor Olds to speak to this because he's all over it. So.
This is as more of a district plan, so it will be we mentioned it will be by the planning team. Is James Sandy to it, or is he not?
Well, we're actually asked to provide feedback on the proposed approach to the draft combined district plan.
That's the boundary setback, I guess, in terms of building function. So
this is what we are asked, to know the need for the impact. This is an ongoing thing.
So this is, council officer Liverpool wants to provide to the district plan regarding waterways. We have present sense of provisions for setbacks. We're not proposing to change those. The confirmation that that is.
So it's a 5 metre.
Yeah. So this is simply the same. This is what you had. We're proposing not to make any change. Are you happy with that approach? So we can then take that to the district plan.
And if there's anyone that does want to make an alteration to them, they'll get a chance when the draft district plan goes out in September. And I guess that's the time that users and government will make a submission.
That's right. I mean, this is just a it's draft to go into a draft of the district plan. So obviously, when the district plan is released, we will submit it. But the discussion states the issue is a balance between reasonable access for maintenance and all those kinds of things. That's right. But at the same time, not trying to unduly interfere with rights to use their property. So that's the reason.
Oh, so you got your
Yeah, thanks, Jeppy. Thanks. I think for the rest of the committee, you and I are fully aware of the background to this, Jeppy, because you and I are the ones that brought it up in the district plan, and it's specifically really for the excuse me, the water races going through the towns where access is extremely limited, particularly if people who have the water races going through their properties don't clean them and so on. And we know of a number of issues in Greytown, for example, where it is almost impossible to get machinery in to do any work on the water race should it be required. With the district plan, of course, with the setback, this became an issue, and we asked for clarification on it. And I suppose, Colin, as part of the subcommittee on the water races, this is going to be a difficult issue to resolve, particularly if people in the urban environment don't clean the creeks, and what's the access going to be like if we have to go in and do it and then bill them to do so. So it's a tricky one, but I think from the district plan committee we settled on 5 metres, didn't we, Jeppy?
yeah. Thanks, Alison. Well,
council aware of the issues that they had with that clarified setback, like changes that they've been to small like that.
at this stage, no, but as I said before, we'll give the opportunity to this draft combined district plan.
So it also just note that the formal feedback will be part of the community as a statement here. This was the time of the draft and moving setbacks. So that at the time of draft, that would be specific consultation around this particular issue.
So just we've got a race subcommittee meeting coming out next month. And we'll probably have that agenda item to discuss as well. I mean, it's long past council and good suggest, but at least if we look into the spaces and the chat.
So we don't have to.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Under the Regulations Act, there is a requirement that you can actually access these properties. Does that not assist us?
Sorry, we can't hear you, Brenda.
No,
Sorry, can I make a suggestion? Sorry to interrupt. Can I make a suggestion? Could somebody pull that small table with the microphone maybe closer up to where the chair is? I know it's a bit of a pain, but possibly putting it a little bit closer to everybody. Sorry.
That's about the maximum call.
Yeah, if that's the maximum. I don't know how much further you can pull it forward.
It's like a little bit more.
Technology is bright.
I think that's about the max.
I can get more.
Okay.
You guys keep going.
I don't know whether that'll make a difference, but so you can only try.
Perfect, it'll do. That's much better. Well done, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom.
Raises a topic for an extraordinary item there, Harry.
Gareth.
Sorry, should we just?
Just a couple of, I don't want to go through and debate all this now because I know it's coming up later on, but one question was, with the existing Longwood under its own act, and that talks about 9 feet as opposed to 5 meters, and there's a lot of confusion about whether we're measuring from the middle of the water or the banks of the water. I'm assuming we're going to have to change the Longwood Act, and if we're going to do that, then we maybe should be reflecting back and going back to what we talked about previously, which is this combined for the whole lot. And Martin measures at the moment from the centre, whereas we talk about 5 meters from the edge. And I'm also assuming it's 5 meters on both sides, because at one stage we had a differentiation as well between which side of the water ratio we're on. So is that going to have to be an act, or can we just do it ourselves as the bylaw change?
That will go through the combined district plan.
Yeah, so there's two segments, obviously, as Garrett's referring to as an active parliament, for instance, it also operates under its own bylaw as well. So you have Longwood bylaw and you have the Roa bylaw. This is a combined district plan vision on the network as it stands, and therefore they make the rules effectively, and their bylaw slots in with those that marry up with the American.
Thanks, Gareth. Brenda, your question again. We got interrupted.
My query was under the RMA or government act with regards to access to that legal process.
I think there is a legal aid.
No, there is not. Yes, so the setback is a district plan mechanism that sets distance of people accountability, which sounds right. The ability for us to go and into a private property, there is provisions in the government act that allow Chelsea provider us or our agents to do that, and so we've delegated to whoever is doing their service. In this case, was the water, if there was clear going on to clear the drains, or it's what's next, then they can go on to the property. So again, it's a couple of
Just need to speak up.
Yeah, Julie, I'm just, when's the draft coming out for the?
I think the draft one district plan, I believe that will still be coming out before the elections. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we're signing off so we've got 2 more meetings and then one to sign off. So I think it's going to be end of August, early September that we sign off the draft. Then it sits in abeyance until after the election. Then it will be going out for community engagement and consultation.
Yeah. So in view of that, I know that we've got a subcommittee in Canada, and we're working with Greater Wellington Regional Council on some of the stuff on the proposed natural resources plan. So I think the committee, once they understand what's involved there, may be better feedback information to council for something a little bit more definitive. Yeah. But they have, obviously we had the opportunity to put a submission in once the draft's been released. For that purpose.
Can I just clarify for you as well that this issue, like I said, arose because of the water races going through the urban environment. There's lots of issues around, or have largely been resolved for rural farmers who use it for stock access anyway. So it's peculiar to the in-town situations of Featherston and Greytown largely, and that's why this paper's here, and that's what the issue, the stumbling block in the district plan was about how do we do that. So I don't think it's too much to worry about in terms of the rural side. But you raised an issue there, Harry, about access into the urban environment, and I know it's slightly offside out of this paper, but because the urban don't pay anything into the management and the maintenance of that scheme. If we go in and do work in an urban environment, where's the mechanism to then bill the urban owner for that work because they haven't done it, or where's the requirement on them to do any work?
So We don't have the power to bill them for the work because they're not a rate payer.
Sorry, I missed that.
We can't recover costs.
And that's interesting, because if you come down and do work on a rural property, you can incur costs if the farmer hasn't, because it's up to the farmer to do it. And if they haven't done it and you have to come and do it, there's a bill that comes with it. Isn't that right, Colin?
Yeah, so you have to realise that the urban environment don't pay a water race targeted rate. In fact, in Greytown, that's probably the only area that affects is that the water race acts as a stormwater network, but it does assist in the continuation of the water race network down through the rural environment. So they've never been charged. We've done a number of, I guess, surveys on their response. Obviously, they don't want to pay a targeted rate for having the glory of a nice little creek running through their property. So that's on council.
I understand that. I don't understand they don't pay, but I'm just wondering if they don't, is there anything in their land ownership that says they have to keep the creek or the water race clean and running? And if they don't, and the council has to do it, because obviously it would cause problems further down the network, are you telling us there's no mechanism to go in and fix it and then bill them for it?
So there's a mechanism to go in and fix it. We can do that through the Local Government Act provisions, but there isn't a mechanism to bill them for it.
Okay, well, that probably needs to be looked at then.
Yeah.
Thanks. So, two more questions. Plymouth and then Garrett.
Yeah, I think Alistair's raised a really interesting point, actually, because if half of our, or if our rural ratepayers are getting charged for it, is it just because that hadn't been written in before? Or I can't understand why, if urban ratepayers who have bought a property knowing that there is the water running through there would, and then they don't do anything to it, and it ends up blocking up and we're having to fix it, where that cost would then be taken up if rural ratepayers who have the water races going through are getting charged. That doesn't quite gel, really. I mean, it should be for everybody. Is there a reason why it was looked at and decided that urban ratepayers wouldn't have to pay?
So the urban ratepayers don't pay water rates.
You mean for water rates?
Yeah.
Yes, is that, but I'm just wondering, I think that's where it needs to be looked at.
And exactly, you should pick that up in the rating review.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. No, I'm glad that's been brought up here then in a public forum, so it can be. Thank you.
Garrett, one more question, then we do have water online. So
can we ask Amy to archive the appropriate?
Garrett, any more questions? You're on mute, mate.
Right upstairs, Colin.
You're still on mute.
You're on mute, Garrett.
Garrett.
We've got one.
Sorry, I'm supporting Pip's point that if the urban don't see the water race as of value, then and they can opt out. There is no opt-out clause for rural. So if rural, in my situation or any other rural situation, doesn't want the water race, they cannot. I'm not going to use it or plant it. Now there should be an opt-in and an opt-out if we're going to go that way. And that's it's further down the way on the rate. Everybody pays it whether they're using it or not. Yeah.
But Harry brought the point up. It's something look at the rating.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I guess the recommendations are obviously we've received point 2, provide feedback on the proposed approach for the draft combined district plan, and note that any feedback will be reported back to the combined district plan and joint committee. Someone like to move those recommendations? I will second it. Lovely. Thank you. We're all Garrett, sorry. You got that? Oh, yeah. Right, we're all in favour. Right, moving on. Thank you. Now, we do have one of the water offering. Oh, it's gone. Tonga.
Yes, it is. So maybe it's just
Okay, well, just while we're waiting for Colin to get back, I will move on. Right.
Go and check the speaker on via table. I think that's fairly.
We just got to see. Right, we're jumping all over the place today. We're now on C2. Right, would someone like to move? We received the partnership and operations water report. Alistair, we have a seconder. With me, we're all in favour. Aye. Right. Colin, you disappeared again.
I'll kick off.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. You have the water report in front of you, and we are pleased to have the CEO Wellington Water, Colin Crampton, and the team available online to speak to segments of this report. Welcome to Wellington Water Limited. You'll see from my commentary that first up, I just wanted to highlight for the committee the work that the capital projects team from Wellington Water Limited have done for us in the previous financial year. It's worth noting, I think, that this team has delivered $5.8 million worth of capital projects for the council. They've done that on budget. Their forecasts come in there or thereabouts on budget, which is excellent. And you'll see from the commentary at the start of the report that there's a long list of achievement there. And too often we can brush past these moments and not properly acknowledge them. And I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that people just pause for a moment, have a look at that $5.8 million list of projects, and just thank the capital expenditure team for the work that they've done for us right across a busy program of work. And it hasn't been an easy year for reasons that we well know. So congratulations to the capital team. I know some of them are online, and we'll just note that up front in the report. Elsewhere in the report, we will be asking council to consider the Tauhara Nikau pipeline options. There's a couple of options on the table for you to consider, but of course you're welcome to consider any of the options that are presented to you. But we've put the spotlight on two options, options 3 and 4. We will be noting budgets. Budgets, of course, have been approved through the annual planning process at 5.3 for the financial year we're in. And we will be also having a discussion about the reset of the Featherston Wastewater Treatment Plant, and just sort of seeking to get your guidance and hopefully your blessing for what has been quite a lengthy process of resetting that project and pointing it in the right direction, so that we're ready to regather momentum on the project and deliver for the Featherston community. Look, I think I might leave it there and invite questions or ask you to bring in Colin at an appropriate moment.
I think it's kind of on screen.
Yeah.
They turn.
Are you asking us for comments there? Sorry?
I think it's just asking. Jackie, can I kick it off? It's a pretty comprehensive report, and I'm pretty impressed with some of the projects that we've got going ahead. One of the things I want to raise, and I know that I don't have voting rights on this committee, is the Donald Street pump station. I understand we've got a lot of iron fenced in, and it's not a system disposing of wastewater through the network, and that we're seeing more instances of sewage overflow and high rainfall streams one of the rest. So the pumping station, I understand, that this is quite critical for disbursement and the caring of those pumps. And I see that it's a budgetary thing that's been excluded for proposed in year 2. And I'm wondering, one, because it's an important piece of infrastructure, why it's excluded and whether or not it can be brought forward as a CapEx expense this current financial year. I think it's quite critical, given what we've seen of recent times with large rainfall events. So certainly, I'd like some discussion around that from this committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The councillor is correct that the Donald Street pumping station is on the program for capital works in year 3 and not in year 2. That said, as we've noted in the paper, there is the ability for Wellington Water and the council to sit down and look at whether we have the criticality right. Do we have the priority projects in years 2 and 3 mapped out correctly? And there is the opportunity for us to adjust that. We were talking about that very thing with Wellington Water yesterday, and there may be things that we can do in the budget to bring forward work into year 2, so that we're in very good stead to do the majority of the work in year 3, for example. So the councillor's point is well heard, and that is something that we can certainly examine with Wellington Water Limited. And in fact, the larger point here is that any priority shifts that the council would like us to examine in terms of the current financial year and the out year, please raise those and bring those to our attention, because the larger point is that we are able to have those conversations, but Wellington Water Limited obviously want us to lock down the capital program as early as possible, allocate the budget, and then let the teams have the certainty and let them get on with the work. So we don't want to be moving things around too much. We want to do that at the very start. And Colin, you've highlighted some items in your recent letter to our CE, which we've replicated in this report, to make sure that from the Wellington Water perspective, we've got all the risk information that you feel we should have while we're making those kind of decisions. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great. So can you hear me, everybody? It's a bit unsure whether you can hear us. Sorry, and I confused you because I jumped on my own iPad without realising we had a team meeting. So that was, thank you for the chance to just talk to you briefly about that. And I just wanted to broaden it out to the whole water business, because at the Water Committee meeting, the Mayor, was challenging Wellington Water on our OPEX costs also around, the certainty of those. And so, we're under no illusion about those budgets, and that's your job as the investor, as the asset owner. But the point, there's just a couple of points I'd like to make. The first is on OPEX. We do rely on the differentiation that large incidents are not funded inside that OPEX, and you have a track record of addressing incidents outside of that OPEX. But I just wanted to point out that if budgets were tight and we ever had to fund incidents from within our OPEX budgets, then we would have to trade that off against level of service. But I think that's well understood by council. On the CapEx program, I think it is worthwhile to remind ourselves that since South Wairarapa joined us, you know, the priority has been ongoing to continue to deliver, you know, safe drinking water to your communities, and we've made, you know, really good progress. And if I could just highlight, you know, the success of the new reservoir and the latest lightning strike, they were, you know, if they hadn't been built, you know, we would have had to cut services. So that, you know, I think that's a really great example of the work that we've done together. But in doing so, you know, you have to set your budgets, and where you've set your budgets for the year going forward, you are carrying risks in the wastewater area. And I think you have seen our updated performance charts on a monthly basis that show that all of the treatment plants, the wastewater treatment plants, are struggling for compliance. And by the budget being set at a level where that cannot be invested in, you know, the council runs the risk of ongoing non-compliance with the wastewater treatment plants and possible prosecution. And I think it's important to note that in parallel with this, the Greater Wellington Regional Council, without a doubt, is increasing its robustness in terms of the compliance of wastewater treatment plants. So I just wanted to point that out to you, that you are carrying significant risk at this level of budget. And the last thing was, in terms of the Featherston wastewater treatment plant, in terms of that upgrade that, you know, you have provided direction on in terms of, you know, doing improvements, you know, across the board there to endeavour to get a consent in early 2023. You know, we are still carrying risk around the ability to hit that date, and also to ensure that we can consent it based on the work that we have planned to do. So Stefan, thank you for the opportunity to comment. I just wanted to make those points at a global level in terms of how we, as we look forward to the 22-23 financial year. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you had a question.
I think Alistair was first.
Okay.
Thanks, Alex. Colin, thank you very much for those comments. And look, I completely agree with everything you've said about the OPEX spend. And if you remember, during our budgetary debates this year, there was a lot of talk about could we possibly come up with an operational reserve in water like we do with our roading network. Under current situations where money is extremely tight, it was unfortunately decided that this is probably not the appropriate time to raise rates to create reserves. That doesn't, you know, we're just going to have to carry that risk, unfortunately. But I think it's something that needs to be revisited as we go forward. But I wanted to ask you a comment about Featherston Street wastewater infiltration. And the reason I raise that is because every time we get a rain, it seems we're getting sucker trucks in to move effluent from Featherston to Greytown wastewater treatment plant or further afield. And it seems that with the more frequency of rain events that we're seeing, is the infiltration occurring in Featherston Street, or is it across the entire network, or is the Featherston Street the main problem? And if so, where is it on the priority list to fix it?
Darwin Street, not Featherston Street. It's here.
Stefan, it's Colin here, and Gary. Are you? Is anyone? I don't have that detail, Alistair, but I'm very happy to write you a note back if people don't have that information in front of them.
I think it's across the network, but I'll provide more detail.
Yeah, I just suppose, you know, if we can reduce the infiltration even 20-30%, is going to make a significant difference, not only to the ongoing operational problem, but to the resolving the problem for the treatment plant in the big picture.
Yeah, which is the same problem throughout New Zealand, Gary, isn't it? Alistair, sorry, it's the same problem.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not pointing the finger at you. I'm just saying, you know, there's no point in building a treatment plant that's going to effectively treat stormwater because it's getting into our system. Let's fix the system and then make the treatment plant fit the need.
Yeah.
And it is a common theme that I speak to people in our community and say, Featherston is treating 3 times as much wastewater as the other 2 towns, even though it's got the smallest population. So it's, you know, it's a really bad situation to be in. So we really need to work out how do we fix that going forward reasonably quickly.
Yeah, and it is across the network, and you're dead right. It does need to be addressed over the longer term. In terms of how that impacts the treatment plant,
don't think you've got enough time or enough funds to address that well enough yet. But you do need to address it separately. And you said 3 times as much. I suspect from what we saw recently, and some of the numbers I saw, I think the numbers are even higher than that. So you have a lot of inflow and infiltration across your network. So yeah, you're right. You're treating more than you need to, but unfortunately, time is not on your side to fix that. It needs to be done as well as the treatment plant. I totally agree, though. Yeah, it's a big impact.
Could you guys perhaps give us a bit of a steer going forward, maybe for the next assets and services or the one after that? I know it's down the track, but some idea about how we're going to fix this issue going forward, and what the even a small incremental improvement is going to make a big difference down the pipeline.
Yeah, I think some high level numbers would be good to give an idea of how long it would take and what's the extent of it. But I think it requires quite a lot of investigation as well to see which are the worst bits of the network. Some of them will be obvious, others less so. So yeah, we'll have a look at that and we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. Alex.
Yeah, cool. Just one point on that, Alistair. I think in the proposed money to be spent on the temporary consent for the Federalist wastewater treatment plant, quite a bit of I&I intrusion into the wastewater is planned to be rectified. Is that correct, Harry?
Yes, that's a component. The priority is to, all of these things with respect to Alistair's comments. I mean, the key thing that Colin is iterating, we also have 83 is we've got a whole lot of risks across our networks, particularly in wastewater. And so, we've got to prioritise what is the most important things to do.
Understand that. Cool.
So yes, in the Federalist and wastewater, there is a amount for I&I, but the bigger issue is actually improving the discharge into the stream for the interim consent, the short-term consent. So that's where the bulk of the money is going, because that relates to literally how we operate the plant to be compliant in terms of our consent.
Yeah. I suppose, Harry, it probably seems very simplistic, but we know there's lots of things that need to be done, and of course we end up in these meetings going, and perhaps having these conversations pretty regularly. Is it worthwhile actually getting a blueprint and saying, this is the plan, and it's going to take 5, 7, 8 years or whatever, but how it's going to affect? So we've got a flow diagram of what happens, and then what happens next, and what happens next, so that we can put that out to the public, so they actually see the long-term plan about how we fix these issues.
So this is the start of that conversation to do that, Alistair. So you've actually got a whole lot of scenarios, investment scenarios, in this report to show you long-term, medium-term, what we need to focus on what the priority is based on the risk. So that please, we actually get some treatment in the wastewater. Not one of our plants is compliant, and they've never been compliant. Right, so just this, but the emerging risk with wastewater is as Colin's quite right, GWRC. They've always reported our wastewater compliance as not too bad, if you like, non-compliant but not too bad. But then that's based on a relative assessment. Now that Tamati ROI has lifted again in terms of regulation of water, the regional councils across New Zealand are also lifting their game. So just because we've been treated in the past in terms of our compliance at a lower level, that risk is increasing significantly. And there's a number of factors that contribute to that. So, and there are things that we can do about that. These aren't technical compliance or non-compliance issues. They're to do with the sludging of wastewater ponds that council prompted. Where the ponds have not been dislodged since 1970. And so there are big checks associated with all of these things. So if you see what's probably the most significant thing that would make a difference to the effectiveness of a wastewater plant now, stormwater coming in or desludging when sand's out. So the point here is we want your guidance about the most critical things to do, whether we simply optimise the current, optimise the year 3, year 2 budgets, which got whole scenarios here, which would include bringing forward the Don Street pump station. So you've got a list of what's in, what's out, and what if we optimise within the present LTP cap, ceiling, what we were able to do. So we're just looking at your guidance to say, have you got an appetite for us to go and do that work to come back to you with detail?
Well, I suppose, Harry, to answer that, and sorry for taking up everybody's time, but I'm not a water expert, so I rely on Colin and his team to tell me what is going to make the biggest bang for the buck. And if he can tell me that something is going to make a bigger difference to us for the people of our towns more than something else, then not having a water background, I'm going to go with that. And so, to me, that's the smart play, because no one around our table is a water expert, with the exception of Rebecca. And so we have to take the advice of Colin and his team. But it is very much about, it's not about getting it all done, because we know we're never going to get it all done. So what is going to be the biggest bang for buck and make the most impact upon us in the shortest period of possible time?
So this is the start. Nothing. So what we're just describing to you today is the risks, and then getting your design. Do we just keep doing what we're doing and that's it? Or with these risks, do you want us to go into the work to come back to you with a reprogrammed CapEx program within the LTP limits with year 2, year 3? They can give you the big span for the buck story. That's the question we're asking you. With the due diligence showing the risk that we're carrying right now, if we simply just continue to do what we're doing the rest of it.
Thanks, Harry. That's what I'm hearing around the table. But I'll go to Garrick and then.
No, I actually haven't even asked my question yet. It's it was just a comment that went off on a tangent there. If I could. So, Colin, reading this, at the long-term plan, you came to us with 2 scenarios that you said you could fulfill the statement of intent that and we agreed with that. We accepted your numbers, and now I'm seeing things like budgetary constraints, lack of investment, limited investment. But we accepted your budgets when we set our LTP. So has there been a regulatory change that has changed the way you, as our asset manager, is able to deliver the SOIs? Or is this just that you're having to relook at everything and say, we got it wrong?
My opinion on that is that there's two things that are changing there, Mayor. The first is that we continue to do due diligence over all of the assets that you own, and as we get greater and greater understanding of those, we're able to give you better and better information. The second is that there's no doubt about it that we're signalling to you that the regulatory behaviour of the Greater Wellington Regional Council is changing, and that we need to signal that risk to you, that continuing to operate wastewater treatment plants, as Harry has quite rightly described to you, on the basis that they're non-compliant and everyone sort of gets away, well, I don't know, not gets away with it, but we're okay with that environment we're working in, is not going to stay. And so our advice to you is to make sure you understand that before you make your final decisions.
Well, our final decisions were made when we signed the LTP.
Yeah.
So this is very difficult to hear for us. And I don't like the tone of it, I'll be totally honest, because we, at the time of setting that LTP, we thought we were spending the right amount of money and of investment. So it's not lack of investment, it's regulatory changes mean our current budgets are insufficient. It sort of does smack of intent as opposed to discovered issues.
Well, and it also reflects the fact that Wellington Water has been less than explicit in the past of the risks various councils are carrying, and it's been at our expense in doing that. So, in the last year, we've been very clear to people in an explicit way what those risks are, because having the problems develop even later, Alex, rather than telling you now, would be even worse.
Well, I as you know, we love a clear and transparent no surprises issues. It's some of these probably aren't discovered, and maybe a cost escalation that we're unaware of that we have to pick and choose. But it's still, I think you know how frustrated I get when I see changes like this midstream, and where we think we're doing the right thing and have budgeted accordingly, and it all changes beneath our feet.
Yeah, and then if you come to the advice that Harry's asking you to consider, I don't believe that we would offer you any other advice other than the strategy you were on, which was to focus on providing safe drinking water as your priority. And I don't think we would ever give you any advice to that. So if you were budget constrained, then it is about making sure you're aware of the risks you're carrying on the wastewater treatment. That doesn't mean we won't work as hard as possible to try and mitigate them for you, but it is important to know, not just by us holding on to them and not telling you.
Totally, but you understand my frustration is 12 months ago, we thought we weren't budgets constrained. We were giving you exactly what you asked for. But however, I'm cool with that.
It's a shame we didn't have that grown up chat at the time, isn't it? So I'll take that on the chin, Alex.
Yeah, well, you presented to council and said, here are the two options and we're happy with either. But what we've got to be careful with, Colin and Harry, is that when we prioritize what we're going to do, that we're not changing our standards of service, which would be a terrible thing to our public. Yeah.
We're not suggesting that. Please, just for clarity, what we're talking about is optimising the present LTP year budgets. So we're not talking about increasing the LTP budgets or changing it. What we're doing is looking at the programming of the work to go on. Because, for example, is the Donald Street pump station that was programmed for year 3. Okay. So do you want to bring that forward to do this year as an example? Program it's in the LTP budgets. It's not in this annual plan budget, but the risk has escalated there as we've experienced because of wastewater mixing with stormwater.
I totally understand that, Harry. I can see that. It's just we've got to be careful that we're not compromising what is stated explicitly in the LTP. Yeah.
Right. Moving on, Gareth.
Yeah, just a couple of quick points, if I may, because I know we're going to have more discussion. Just quickly on the I&I and Featherston, there was a plan back in 2013 which wasn't action. My question would be to your team, Colin. I know we put in a new main feed down Waite Street to over Longwood Road, which cost the thick end of $1 million. Do we know how much that saved in terms of actual I&I going through? Are we interested to know how efficient? Are we doing the right thing by replacing these old pipes, or are we better off to bite the bullet and start from scratch? And once again, I take Alice's point. I'm not an expert, but it seemed to me if it works with new liners, well, let's do it. But I have a doubt because I don't think the volume of I&I has gone down dramatically. So question on the table. The project management plan, we've only had this for a week, and I don't want to be too picky, but do we have to make a decision today? Because I really would like to go out to the community and talk to my colleagues in Featherston Community Board, Maori Standing Committee, about the structure and where we're going. Because it's all very well. We asked for a slightly different approach to all this. We wanted councillors right at the top of this, involved or being able to access. Unfortunately, this hasn't really happened. And whether or not Maori Standing should be on that governance board, these are things which I really would like to discuss with my community. So can we please put a hold on that, say for 2 or 3 weeks till we get a chance to discuss that, with that community going back. And the other one was going through that report. We're looking at something like $2 million for a short-term consent. My initial concern was if we're going to do a short-term and a long-term, what is the overlap? Because $2 million is a lot of money. And I really would like, if we can have an idea of where we're going with the long-term consent, then obviously that can be built in to this initial $2 million of funding. That, for what it's worth. Thank you.
Colin, a session's going to require to go.
Well, thank you, Chair. I mean, my responses to the second question that the councillor has posed, which is the reset of the Medicine Wastewater Treatment Plant consent project. Now, councillors were very clear that they wanted us to completely reset that project. They wanted us to do that immediately, and we have done that. We went back to Wellington Water with our concerns. We were very clear about what they were. We held a workshop with Wellington Water in the room, with GHD in the room, Simon Cartwright and our own people in the room, and we looked very carefully at what was wrong, what wasn't wrong, and how we might do better. Now, the result of that has been quite extensive. You'll see in the report that we have completely rejigged the governance structure. So you've now got 3 layers of governance. You've got governance, a steering group, and a project team. We have got South Wairarapa District Council voice and influence in all levels of that project. So at governance, we have our newly appointed principal advisor in water transformation, Robert Wells. She will sit in governance. We will also have an iwi liaison person that we have reached out to the chair of the Māori Standing Committee to advise us on who that would be. So both iwi liaison and South Wairarapa representation in governance. In the steering group, we will have Simon Cartwright there representing South Wairarapa interests, and also in the project team. So alongside that, we have a guarantee from Wellington Water that they'll work with us to improve comms on this, to make sure that we get more regular reporting to assets and services, and that we're also going to line up the GHD project lead with the Wellington Water project lead, which I think is an excellent idea. So look, overall, management's impression is that we have delivered to you a package of change that will reset that project effectively. Now, of course, that's your prerogative to re-examine that, reopen that, go back to the community on it. You know, you may do as councillors anything you wish, but just from a management perspective, please consider how long that's going to take, how much more money that's going to take, how complicated that might make things. And that the imperative here is for us to turn the corner, get the momentum back, and start delivering on the project. That's all I would raise for you to consider as you put this question in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Could I just make a quick comment on that, Chair?
Yeah.
Just to reiterate that point, that we are comfortable with what Stephen's discussed, but we're sitting in July 2022, and I can't remember the date of the
31st of January.
31st of January 2023 is when we have to demonstrate to the Greater Wellington Regional Council we're giving effect to that consent. So it's a short period of time.
Thank you, Colin. Time is of the essence to give them a short term.
Yeah.
Third time lucky.
Yeah.
All righty, right. So, look, I just firstly thank you for your comments, Stephen. Totally understand where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, all of the funds that come through council are coming from our ratepayers. We have our own diligence that we have to follow and that we need to be comfortable with for ourselves and for our communities. And so, it's what can our ratepayers bear at the end of the day. Anything additional like this, anything that impacts on the long-term plan that's put on the table, we have to follow our procedures. Sorry, but to be able to put these forward now, I think this is a really comprehensive report. I am someone that takes a little bit of time to try and actually have a look at everything. But there's 87 projects I've counted roughly, so I could actually have miscounted that. But at least 87 projects now put on this list between 2023, 22 and 23, with the funding that was there. I noticed that there's really big hikes on some of them, like so for Martinborough wastewater, for Greytown wastewater, it was 50,000 this year, and then 250,000, and then it's you know, but if we go with scenario 3, it's, you know, suddenly we've gone to 7.8 million. It's all up for those for a few of the 87 to get done, you know. So asking us to go through and actually have a look and really prioritize these, I think is really important. But I couldn't do it today and tell you, okay, this is exactly where we need to go for myself. So, but I really appreciate everything that's being put and said today, because it helps me to look at it in a different way from how, you know, perhaps I had been at the start of reading through all of it, because it's a lot of figures and a lot of information, and I really want to make sure that I've got my head properly wrapped around it. So I do appreciate all of the conversation today. I'm just not at a place yet where without, exactly like Garrick said, we need to go back and speak to, for me, I'm on the Martinborough Community Board. You know, I think our community boards need to have a look at this to see if there's anything that they think is a priority for their area, and get a really good understanding of that from all 3 of our towns as well, and wards. So, you know, including out further, Lake Cleary's on there. We've got, you know, we need to be able to have that time to go and have those conversations.
Thanks, but I think Harry could.
Yeah, so we're not asking you to approve or do anything with those scenarios. That is going to come back to you to consider. What we're asking is, we've got a program out. Okay, there are more risks in the wastewater systems, right? And we're simply saying, do you want us to take the next step, which is to shape them by the risk and what things need to be done, so that you can do just what you're describing. Right? So this is just to give you an idea that there's of the information that's sitting behind this. So you've got the explanation of the risks, some of the things that can be done, and I just reiterate, this is not around more money. This is about the amount of funding we've already approved, about whether you want us to start moving year 3 work into year 2 to manage some of the risks. It's just simply giving you a direction on that, so we can come back to you with an optimised program, and then you can talk to community boards, do all those things work. So we're just getting a direction from you.
Well, thanks. Look, I'm conscious of time, but Alistair, you've had your hand up for a while. We do need to move on to some of these other.
Yeah, thanks, Jeppy. Look, I'm very interested in. Colin, I've read through your report in quite a lot of detail, and a lot of it's numbers and things, but I'm really interested in when you say that you know, the budget, and a little bit like Alex said, we came to you and we got the budget and so on for year 1, year 2, year 3 of our annual plan, and I'm interested in things that have been excluded. But more importantly than that, when I think back to the audit report that was done on our long-term plan, there was an issue in there, and I can't remember the comment, and Harry, you might be able to help me, about the capacity of Wellington Water to do the work that we've budgeted for. Are you telling us now, Colin, that you have more capacity to do more work? Because if I remember rightly back to the audit report, the auditors raised an issue of concern as to whether Wellington Water had the capacity to do everything we were asking you to do anyway. Is that right, Harry?
No, sorry, let me say no. So the audit in at times a general concern that they're seeing across the country. So the audit was a note around capital full stop. It was not specific to Wellington Water. It was simply a note to say, in this context of COVID, all those types of things, a note to say, you know, we want to see if you're able to achieve your CapEx budgets. That was
Thank you for that clarification. Then,
it's
Colin,
not specific to Wellington Water.
Okay, then I come back to you again, Colin, over in Wellington. Are you telling us that you've got more capacity than what you potentially said to us when we did our long-term plan?
What we said to the collective of all councils was, and the Mayor made this point at the time, was that when all of you increased your CapEx expenditure, we then had to come back and explain to you that we would have to step that up year on year on year to be able to do all of it inside the 3-year period. And so we gave ourselves the target of growing our program from 130 million last year to 160 million this year, and we've achieved that, and we're on track to aim for 220 million collectively across the organisation. And what that reflects on is the capacity of all of our contractors to deliver the size of program that sums up to all of the council's requests. And what we've put on front of you, I assume, Gary, is something we're comfortable we can do over the next 2 and 3 years, evidenced by the last year's performance.
Yeah, we're not constrained by our capacity to deliver anything up.
Okay, because what I'm seeing is some things that were excluded. And if I just use smart water meters, I'm sure that that's actually in our long-term plan to do and was funded in the second year. So I'm wondering why have costs just gone forward to such an extent that you're now cutting things out, or what?
It's prioritisation, I think.
But we funded what we expected to see, and now some things are excluded. So is that a cost issue that things have now increased beyond what we approved money for to be done?
Would it be worth to go back and just check that? No, do you think? What do you know?
Yeah, I know that particular part of it is not where it was on the priority list as other things have come up. But that's been discussed with the council officers about priorities, and some of those may have shifted as other things have come up on the agenda. But some costs have gone up, but really that's not the main thing. It's
well, I suppose what I'm really asking is saying we approved the plan that you put in. You gave us 2 options, and we approved an option and funded that option accordingly in our long-term plan. Is that money that we approved in our long-term plan enough to meet that plan, or do we need more money? And if so, how much more and why?
Stephanie was going to answer that for you, Alex.
Sorry, I just wanted to make, just through your chair, just wanted to make a quick intervention here. I just feel as if Wellington Water are bearing the brunt of something here that isn't quite fair. And I just want to explain the process that we've been through with them.
Look, I'm not pointing the finger at Wellington Water. I think Wellington Water do a great job for us. I'm trying to understand why we approved something, and here we are 12 months later. Is there not enough money?
Did you wait till Stephanie explains it, please?
Just wanted to underline that officers have sat down with Wellington Water teams, and we have looked at the most critical projects that we believe should be prioritised within the LTP, and we have made some adjustments. We have moved some things around, and Councillor Plummer, you have correctly identified that we have deprioritised the smart meter project. We've moved that out to make room for more critical projects in year 2. Now, in doing that, we have kept the same budgets for year 2 and 3. The only thing that we've done to the budgets in year 2 and 3 is we've moved 1.3 million from year 3 into year 2, which reflects the amount of budget that we needed for the Federalist Wastewater Treatment Plant consent project to be fully funded. Other than that, the quantum stays the same, but the criteria for this list, as we put it together with Wellington Water, is priority. It wasn't about cost, it was about within the budget, LTP budget we've got, what must we spend the money on first?
Okay, so if I'm here,
just a point here. This is a note on the advice on the budget. It's not a recommendation going forward. We could debate this for the rest of the day and still not achieve.
No, look, I understand that, Jeffrey. I'm just trying to get in my head what you're actually asking us. Are you saying that? Are you telling me that there's enough money in the long-term budget to still achieve the things in the long-term budget, even though it might be a little bit of jiggling here and there between the years? Or are you telling us that you need more money to achieve the things that we approved in the long-term budget?
So the answer to that is yes, there is enough money in the long-term plan in the 2 years to achieve the achieve what we need to do. Okay? And the question is, what priority do you want to spend? The one bit that is the next agenda item on this that is not in the long-term plan and not in where we should shuffle is the Turanikau pipeline. Okay, so
Yeah, understand
yes,
that.
we have that, but the Turanikau sits outside that. Okay?
Right. Okay. So just to clarify, so that I get that, and sorry, I'm being really slow today. I just want to understand this very clearly, that what you are telling me is our long-term plan budget is sufficient to meet what we asked to be done in the long-term plan over the 3-year period, albeit you're going to play around with priority within that.
Yeah,
but you don't need more money. Is what you're telling me is you do not need more money to achieve the long-term plan.
Other than the Turanikau plan.
Other than the Turanikau plan. Okay.
Yeah, and contingent on councillors understanding the impact of the risk that's been identified by Wellington Water as our trusted advisor. So, you know, that's an important part of the puzzle. They do want us to note that if we spend within the LTP on the scheduled work that we've agreed, that's fine, but then this risk exists on top of that, and they just want a due note taken of that.
Yeah, and we won't be able to do anything about that until next year when we have an opportunity to go out and consult in the annual plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, I want to leave that
Thank you.
there now because we've got another important recommendation regarding the Taranaki pipeline, and I want Brenda, I'll get the members to talk to this first. So we are asked to recommend to council that option 3 or 4 is confirmed as a long-term solution for the Taranaki pipeline of funding to prepare a long-term loan. Now you've all read what is put in front of us. Yes, so I'm just going to ask one of you, if you want to proceed to this, please. Is that Adam, are you doing this?
Sorry, did you want us to sort of talk to the report?
Yes, please.
Yep. Sorry, we can't hear you so well.
That's all right, I can do that. Right, we sent through a slide pack, a presentation, and there's quite a lot of slides in there. I'll take it that you don't want me to go through every detail, but I'll give you an overview of what we've looked at and what those costs are and what our recommendation is. And then I'll take some questions from you if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we looked at 6 different options here, and we wanted to make sure that knowing that funds are tight, and this was extra to your LTP, that we included a couple of options which will be considered the due minimum, if you like. And that due minimum really would just be effectively maintenance of the existing situation and to prop that pipe up and try to protect it in the short term. So that was the first option that we looked at. We also looked at reinforcing the existing pipe where it sits. And then we looked at the least intrusive, which will be a trenchless installation of a pipe via pipe ramming under the river. And then we looked at open trenching in the river, and that would be done with sheet piling and open trenching in the current location where it is, but 4 meters below the riverbed. Then we also looked at a suspension bridge, and that suspension bridge wouldn't be able to go exactly where the pipe is. That would need to go a little bit further along the bank, and so it would include some pipe work to find the optimum position for a bridge, and so we've looked at that too. And then we looked at making use of existing structures which are further down the river at the existing railway bridge. So that would be a pipeline down to the railway bridge, which I believe is about 1 kilometre downstream, and then pipeline back up again. Now, of those 6 options, we are aware that we would need some consent for a couple of those to be working in the river, and so we've been consulting with Greater Wellington, and we've looked at the consent conditions needed to remove the existing pipe and to put a new pipe in there, either open trenching or to go under the river. And also you'd need to consider that even a new structure such as a bridge, you would still need, I think, a consent there because you're so close to the riverbanks. Now, of those, the one which was seen as best value for money in your long term is the open trench installation. Now, the one that causes least disruption would be the trenchless installation, but that is a higher cost. And also there's some risk in there in terms of the way that they deliver it. The river has an awful lot of boulders in there, and any trenchless solution where you've got boulders is high risk. So you've got a high risk that you get partway through, you get stuck, and you end up having to open trench it anyway. So we looked at all those risks. The risk with open trenching is that you have difficulty getting consent, but Greater Wellington have given us a positive reaction for that, and also positive for removing the existing pipe too. So for quick and ease and low risk, we would recommend that you open trench and put a new pipe 4 meters deep under the river. And that's your quickest and easiest way of doing that. 2.75 million for the cost of that. Now, understanding that you haven't got the funds for that right now, we looked at the risk of the short-term work which have been done by the operations team, and you've got no certainty with that fix that's been done so far. You've always got the possible risk that of an impact damage from one of those boulders coming down and hitting the pipe during a storm. So we can't say anything for certain, but we know that the existing fix is likely to hold up for a year or two, and you can do some maintenance in the meanwhile while you are gathering together enough funds to do the recommended option. And that's where I think we're coming to. That's what we would advise. What our preference would be, whether as soon as you have enough funds that you progress the design and get ready to implement this solution, so that if the worst happens and that joint breaks again, which is going to be your weak point, any joints in there, or it deteriorates badly, or you get a sudden, a flurry of storms which really wash away underneath the pipe, that you're ready to move quickly and implement that open trench replacement of the pipe. So that was the view of the team, and we had a review of the options as a group, and we had a workshop, and we scored all of them on the different criteria, and the open trench new pipe solution is what we're recommending.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you mentioned there's a matter of getting the funds. I think the important thing is here, we have the ability to borrow the money, spread it over the lifetime of the pipe. But I think we could have a blowout of that pipe tomorrow, so I think we've got to prepare ourselves and get something to council, a recommendation to council for a long-term solution. So I guess everyone's gone through this. Alice, I know you will have. You didn't say that you're not a water expert, but this is quite logical.
Before you do move on, I just want to make one point there, that this is at the option stage. We do an early stage estimate. We have brought in a contractor to give us advice on the risks of doing this work, and they have given us an initial estimate. That's not the same as getting a firm price from a contractor. So you just need to be aware of that risk. That's a current early stage estimate, 2.7 million. There's always a risk with that could go up.
Yeah, well, that was the figure. You put a contractor may come in, hopefully a little bit lower. I guess we have to wait for that. But the question being asked of the assets and services committee to put a recommendation through the full council, and if we can get a little bit of a feel for where we want to go with this, so we can, like a lot of things have got to be done or agreed upon pretty soon. Alex, you had a point?
Yeah, look, first question I've got is, did you assess?
I had Alex on,
Oh, sorry.
It's my turn this time, Alistair. Hey, probably a question for Harry. Of the option which retains the pipe in its current place, is the installation of a solution a CapEx or an OpEx?
CapEx.
All of them are CapEx?
Yes. Yeah.
I think the first option may be considered OpEx because it would really just be a basic getting down there with a digger, supporting the pipe, making sure it's protected. I think that would be considered the minimum option one. It would be considered ongoing maintenance, I think, because it would be as and when required.
In the slideshow, there's a slide that talks about the cost estimates and it breaks it down into CapEx and OpEx costs.
All right.
So option 2, while there'd be some capital investment, there'd also be a higher level of operational cost by comparison to putting a new pipeline in.
All right. Excellent. Sorry, I missed that. I've missed that column. Thank you for that. The other one is, if I could do a comment, and I'm interested in a councillor's comments that this is relatively important, and I think we need to do it once and do it right. Too often we tend to do the least just to limp along. It'd be really nice to see a permanent solution that's robust for our community for many years to come. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
well, Stephen wants to add something to that. So.
I'm sorry, through you, Chair, sorry to jump the queue, Alistair. I won't take a moment. The recommended option, as you've heard, is number 4, which is an open trench installation, which is at a 4-metre depth under the river. But I would also encourage Wellington Water Limited to give us a little bit of information about the benefits of option 3 versus option 4, because management was attracted to both of those options, because both of them have a 100-year life and present a very low risk. Now, if for example, we were to get a favourable decision from council on loan funding, and that could accommodate either option 3 or option 4. Wellington Water, would it be all right if you just gave us a little bit more information about comparing and contrasting those two options? And councillors, if you look at the slides, which I believe started about 180 in your pack, that is by far the easiest way to make sense of what is a lot of information that's been given to you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
50, wasn't it?
Sorry,
I can provide more information on that. When looking at the risk between option 3 and option 4, we do like trenchless solutions, and we do have a really good contractor who can do pipe ramming, and it is done under streams and rivers. The risk with that is that there are limitations what you can do with trenchless solutions, and if a big boulder gets in the way, you'll get stuck and you'll have to change your method partway through. And you could start off, and also the cost of the trenchless solution. You need a launch pit and you need a receiving pit, and the temporary works are quite extensive, and you need a lot of space. And when you're doing that, you're relying on luck not hitting a large boulder, which is going to prevent progress. You could start off with a budget to do it trenchless, and you could end up with lots of variations. And the cost in any case of that trenchless solution was much higher at 4.9 million. The other thing there is that the benefit of going trenchless is, in terms of the environment on a temporary basis, you're not disturbing the riverbed in the same way. But given that Greater Wellington has given us a positive response to open trenching, I would really, I would recommend the open trenching now.
Good. Alistair.
Yeah, thank you. When you were doing this, I'm interested in the age of the pipe from the water treatment site down to the river that goes through the farmland, and how old is that, and what's its current state, and when is that due for upgrading and replacement?
Oh, I think we need to take that one away. I don't think. Yeah, we need to check. We need to check with our operations team. We haven't looked beyond the locality of the river really, but it's a good point. Yeah.
And because that leads me down to the solution. You know, and I appreciate the work you've done here. I think it's very thorough. But unless we look at it from start to finish, then we're not necessarily going to compare apples with apples, of course. Because if that pipeline needs to be replaced in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we might as well do it once and do it as Alex was saying. And then that opens up other options that may be more beneficial to the community in a wider sense further on down the track. So I think we might be a little bit premature in saying which is our preferred option at this stage.
Right. Yes, you can.
Within an open trench, how are we better off with that than we are with the pipe how we've got it now? Because although we've got a trench, what's happened is that the ground underneath or the things underneath the pipe have moved up, and I don't see that stopping because the river's not changing at all. So we're still going to gradually move that pipe up so that it gets to the top, and I don't see that we're dealing with that issue in any of this, except to put the pipe right over the top and out of the river altogether. So how do we cope with that? Thanks.
Right, the water. Do you hear that?
Yeah, so we've had some river engineers looking at that, and we've looked at the typical erosion over the years. They've looked at, when we looked at this previously, they didn't have a lot of information. They've looked at it in a bit more detail, and this will provide a 100-year design life based on the erosion that they expect. We know it's not a linear thing, and then we know that can vary a lot. Different conditions can prevail over time. We know that the river is moving both vertically, it's eroding vertically, and it's moving horizontally. But we also talked about that, about the confidence of in terms of river management, about whether that's going to continue to move. So yeah, we have looked into that, and for this option, we expect a 100-year design life. And it's worth noting that I think the bridge option is only 50 years, is that right, Linda? Bridge option is only a 50-year design life, but this is 100.
So in essence, I suppose I was paraphrasing that, we were saying it would take 100 years for the river to drop to the 4-metre level of the pipe.
Yeah, these are always estimates on river engineering. It's a very much a tricky way. It's a prediction based on what they know of behaviours of rivers, but and it can vary. But you will get a relatively long design life for that one, yes.
Sorry,
Look, I mean, of course, council can ask. Sorry, but of course, council can ask a whole lot more questions on this. We've provided you with a very comprehensive assessment of options, but you're free to ask us to go away and do more work. Just please bear in mind that work will take more time and will incur more costs. And at any point, we could have a weather event that knocked that pipe out. So, look, what we're doing here is Wellington Water has given you a very sophisticated, comprehensive report. It's cost quite a lot of money to do that. You've got all the information in front of you that you need to make a decision in management's view on the option through the river. But, you know, of course, if you want more information wider than that, we're happy to do that.
But that other information isn't going to help the situation as it is now. I can't see, I mean, there is urgency in this.
That's a decision for councillors. I think what, if I'm paraphrasing Alistair, what he's thinking is, okay, should we do the whole job and do it properly? I think that's what Alistair was saying. So let's look at the whole pipe. But having said that, I think irregardless, you can still make a decision on what to do across the river and bring this other information in. Because they're two related, but they're two quite separate pieces of information.
Yeah, so I've just got a few comments. I think the trench list was actually originally used back when they were looking at Papua and it didn't work, which is why they ended up doing open trenching. So that's just one thing to remember. I think with Mana Whenua input, that's also on there, and what their queries were, especially with regards to Featherston, when they have Tauhera Nikau and Featherston catchments, why they're using water from Greytown, and does, you know, like our Mana Whenua from Papua aware of that, and that they're wanting more information. How have you gone without finding out that information for them? Where are you at with your report to Mana Whenua?
It's still underway. I haven't completed it yet.
But do you have any updates at all with like where
Yes,
where you're at with it?
The decisions were made. I believe there was central government funding when the supply moved to Greytown. I'm still getting my head around the decision making process that happened then and the rationale behind it. So I'm sort of collating the information to prepare to issue to Mana Whenua.
Yeah, I think they've just raised some really important points to actually have a look at, because not sure where the treaty settlement sits with them and with the waterways. But if they turn around and say that they don't want that pipe in there, and they've also said what their concerns are with going underneath, then it may be that the bridge is the way that we have to look at doing it. So I mean, we have to bear all of that in mind as well. Just seeing that in the report, I just thought I'd better bring that up because it hadn't been mentioned yet.
You'll see in there that I've only been able to speak to Rangitane about it to this point.
Ngāti Kaurau hasn't finished their settlement yet.
So yeah, I've not had a lot of success in securing a meeting with them at the moment. But the feedback we got, they weren't very definitive around going underneath the river. The feedback was very clear to not go through it or be in it.
Yeah.
But there was also a real, while Ra was very keen to investigate the reasons why the supply is coming from Greytown, he was also very supportive of looking after the community and ensuring a supply. So it was on balance, but there's definitely that work action, that action point in play to provide the information back to him. And
Ra is, I believe he's both as well. So you are kind of getting input from both with him. So.
Sorry, did I say Ra? I might have meant Horipo. My apologies. It's Horipo I've met with.
So you suggest that we don't make a recommendation until we've got a complete report from
well, it's one of the things that they need to score on, and they haven't been able to make the score on it because they haven't finished yet to be able to go through that. And what I'm saying is, if that's actually part and it belongs to them as part of the settlement, we need to make sure that we're actually, you know, we don't want to go and do something, pay lots of money to do it, and then we have to redo it. You know, that's the last thing that we'd want to do.
I guess the risk there is how long is it going to take before they we can get an answer from them. I mean, this is an issue that could blow out tomorrow, and we need to be pretty proactive.
Sorry, can I just, so there are two other options that are far more expensive, but remove all of the risk and remove the concern. That's absolutely right. Traditionally, we had an iwi management plan that would not want works in a stream or a river. Full stop. We look halfway across the country at any iwi management plan. There are two other options here that are more expensive. I imagine imagine, and I'll ask the board to comment on option 5 and 6, but they do not involve any works in or under a river. And so you've got the suspension bridge option, and you've got the diversion to the rail line and crossing on the rail bridge. Yes, they come with more capital cost, and I stress that. Option 5 is 6.410, and it has an OPEX of 630. The diversion to the rail line and crossing on the rail bridge is 79 with 100,000. I would have noted, and I note the caveats from Wellington Water around the uncertainty, but for both of those options, I would think they would be more certain in terms of the engineering cost to do, particularly the suspension bridge over this reason, be impacted by cost of materials and construction index and so forth. So, you know, if council had in mind, you know, we've given you, if you like, the medium term costs, but you could actually do as Alex suggested, which is do it once, do it properly, and you know, do the right thing in the sense of both mana whenua and works the waterway, but that would cost more. So if you wanted to give us that guidance and principle, that's where you want us to go, then that is very definitely an option for you to consider. Could I just ask Wellington Water to comment on those options 5 and 6, and particularly sort of that thought around if we undertook those works in terms of the risk of the cost estimates, how more reliable are they? Obviously, the treacherous one, you've demonstrated, sorry, the one up the river, you're saying there's a whole range of things that could escalate to all sorts of things. Could you just comment on options 5 and 6, and if you like, the reliability of the budget estimates for those?
Yeah, sure. So the suspension bridge, as I said, is only a 50-year design life. And it also, it's not just about the bridge. You need to divert the pipe towards that, the best place to have a crossing. I believe you also still need to have a consent there. Your support for the bridge is still going to be on the riverbanks, and you need to find the best place for that. So there are some risks around that, and the cost of the bridge. We know a company who does these kind of bridges, and they're very good, and they've done one like this before. So it's a nice option, but potentially very expensive at 6.4, and a lot of that is not just going to be in the bridge. So the bridge might be a reasonable price, but you've also got pipeline in there as well. Then option 6, you have to go some distance along the bank down to that railway bridge, and then we'll have to do an assessment of the existing structure. I don't really think that'll be a problem, but you do introduce other stakeholders in there with going across on the rail bridge, and also that we need to make modifications to that bridge too, so that carries some risk as well. Also, you're going through some potentially difficult ground all the way down there, which is going to be a couple of kilometres. And that's the reason why it's such a high price at nearly 8 million, because you've got a couple of kilometres of pipeline in there. The idea of the benefits of the trench, the open trench option is that you can do it where it is, where the pipe is at the moment, and you're on a well-trodden path, if you like that. You're in the same place. Anywhere else that you move it to, you introduce other risks.
Thank you for that. Just a couple of comments. One, we have approached Kiwi Rail, and they've given us, given us a view that they would be happy to attach the pipe to the rail bridge if we want to do so. Of course, a rail bridge by definition is a centre span bridge, and they're built, excuse the expression, brick shit houses. So, that part of it, or acknowledge the pipe risk.
Can I just ask a question on these options where you've got the list on, you've got the CapEx estimate, and you've got the estimated maintenance? Is that a per annum maintenance, or is that over the 100-year life of the pipe?
I think that's over the whole life.
So you can divide that by 100. So you're saying that on option 5, the maintenance would only be 6,300 per annum.
Yeah, the bridge, you mean? For the bridge, it's 50-year design life and a total maintenance of 630,000 during that time.
Mel, you had your hand up there.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Sorry that my video isn't actually working, so I'll just take it off so it's not too distracting. Look, I just had one question. Going back to the beginning of our triennium here, I'm with the Martinborough Community Board, but before COVID, we all talked about looking at new water sources, whether or not Martinborough required a new water source, whether or not Featherston required a new water source. And I'm just wondering, when you're talking about these really large sums, millions of dollars, whether what the cost is to investigate a new water source for Featherston on their side of the Tauhere River.
Yeah, it's a fair point, but it's a big question, and outside of the scope of what we've looked at here, that would take much longer and a lot more investigation for us to look at alternative water sources. Yeah.
Oh, so there hasn't been any work done at all looking or investigating water sources, new water sources, sorry, for Martinborough and Featherston? There hasn't been any work in this triennium?
There's been none done, to my knowledge, except for they have a couple fly around looking at it. That hasn't happened.
Okay.
But I think one of the water answers that a little bit now, but it's probably out of the scope of what we're trying to decide here today, I think, you know.
Well, when we're talking about 100 solutions.
If we were to go ahead and look at the different water sources for the towns, that would take not only a lot of money, but a long time. We could have an issue with the Taranaki by tomorrow. And I think what we need to do is look at how we can supply water to Featherston first up.
Absolutely.
You have a query?
Yeah, you also need to make sure that you take action fairly soon, because every day it's at risk in that river, and that you could always have a mishap there, and especially on that joint that's already broken once, there's always the possibility something could hit that again. So some of the bigger things you're looking at are going to take longer to address. Yeah.
Who are we on? Alistair or Cliff?
That looks pretty envious.
Yeah.
Alistair was first, sorry. I was trying to point at him, but then I realised he probably wasn't on the same place on your screen. So all I was going to say was I just wanted to just really quickly ask Linda, when was the last time that you spoke to anyone from Mana Whenua?
I'd have to look at my diary to check when the last meeting was with Horipo, but at a guess it was
that's at iwi level.
A month or so ago.
Is that right? So that's at iwi level with rangitane, not actually at hapu.
Iwi, yeah, I guess iwi level. You're talking about up in the Masterton office.
Yeah. So we're South Waikato Upper. So
yeah. So it was Horipo, and I can't remember. There's a new person up there that was included as well. Adam and I popped up and had a hui with them.
Can you remember when? Was it this year or last year? Or
definitely within the last month or 6 weeks. So quite, relatively recently.
Yeah. Oh no, the only reason I ask is I just want to like make it really clear. The sooner we get that information, the sooner that we can make decisions. And I guess for me, I'm looking at this and I'm just going, it's not a complete report yet without it. When we know when it comes to waterways, what the settlement's looking like. So we just want to make sure that we have that information, because it may change what we can do. And I mean, if we're looking at putting something in place for 100 years or whatever, then whatever we need to make those decisions, yeah, and spend that money. I want to make sure that it's spent at the right place at the right time once.
Right, well, I'm hearing around the table now that we don't want to make a recommendation to council at this stage. We want a lot more work done on it. And I think that we need to move on. Harry's got to be gone pretty soon, and we've got a very important issue coming up on the agenda. So,
sorry, Jeppy, before you move on, I would like to say something else. Really sorry to say that to you, but look, I think firstly, Wellington Water, well done on a report. I think you've looked at the report very much, but in isolation, as you should do. And what you're there to do is provide a report for a particular problem. Our council officers, however, need to take a wider view about this and say, what are the other things that this project will impact upon? And when you look at the other things that can possibly come out of this project, like the rail trails, the development of the Greytown hub that's going to that's the new settlement that will eventually end up at the railway line there, and all these things talk about where we might need water pipes in the future. We have an opportunity to take a big picture look at this right now, and that's why I asked that question about the age of the old pipe. Are we going to need a new pipe? Because we know that there is going to be a settlement within a kilometre of the railway station at Greytown. We know that there's a demand for a rail trail along Underhill Road and all these things. And we know that the rail department, Transrail, have already said yes, in principle, to hanging a pipe under the rail bridge. So it behoves, Stefan, you and your team to take a wider look at this rather than just look at this as a problem of a pipe across a river. And if you did that, I think you might find that there would be other options that you might be recommending to us.
Hence what I said before, Alistair, that I'm hearing that we want the staff at Wellington Water to go back and have another look at this, and we will not be making any recommendations to council today.
No, I agree with you, Jeppy. I just wanted to get what my thoughts.
A quick recommendation for council to include the financial for our rate plans.
You can't make a recommendation.
No, but
I think that's part of the big wider scope for us. Right, well, that pretty well covers our water report. Wellington Water, I know that you've got other things on pretty soon, so thank you very much for your attendance. And I guess Stefan and Harry will be in touch.
Yeah. Just ask what we ended on the reset of the Federalist Wastewater. So right, sorry.
It's point 4 on the recommendations is a note. The reset of the Federalist Wastewater treatment plan has been completed and a new project plan issued for your consideration. So we've all read that plan, Stefan and others have talked about it. It's not a recommendation, it's a note. Is that how I see it? Yep. So we're not recommending.
No, that's absolutely right, because subject wise, you need to cover for council.
Oh, well, definitely.
Yeah, so will that come by way of recommendation?
So just to be clear, if you've asked us to develop a model, give us guidance that changed the relationship with Wellington Water, that would be a governance decision. Okay. If you're leaving it with Wellington Water, modified, it's an operating decision. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So how we manage the process internally is us. The governance decision is whether to stay with Wellington Water. Yeah. Okay. So that hence the recommendations to know this is the structure that we will be applying.
Yeah. That's right. Thank you.
Okay, Tim, thank you.
Sorry, Harry, could you just repeat that again? Are you saying that this won't come back to governance? What was that? Sorry, I couldn't quite make out what you were saying then.
So the direction you gave us was to develop a model that buttressed the way that we work with Wellington Water and the project management, include a local and project team, all those things. We have done that. The governance decision would have been if you'd given us a direction to take it away from Wellington Water and bring it in-house. That's a governance decision. how we operate with Wellington Water. So we've given you all the frameworks about how to do that. That's an operating decision. It's not a governance decision. So we're just saying, given your direction to us, we're asking you to note that this is formally, that this is the way that we're managing the ongoing urgency to complete the Featherston wastewater.
Oh, Featherston wastewater. Okay, sorry. That was all I wanted to know. I wasn't sure if you were talking about Taranika or everything in general. So this was just with regards to Featherston wastewater.
Right, thank you. Water. Now, officers have a little bit of homework to do. I would normally call for a break at the moment, but I know Dominic's sitting over here jumping side to side wherever we go. So I want to move to.
Sorry, GP. I actually do need a break. It's been 2.5 hours, and we just I just need to stretch because I need to get up and move around for 5 minutes, and everyone else on Zoom may probably feel the same way. So.
Okay, just a point here. I do need to someone to move that we note 3 and 4 as read. Is that right? Yeah. You can see them. Note 3 is no point for the number of advice on the financial year 2020, 23, 24 budgets, and printing risk attached as yet funded capital projects. Now we've been through that, and note 4 is note the reset of Federalist wastewater treatment plan has been completed, and the new project plan issued for your consideration. Now, Harry's just explained that. So, someone like to move that those 2 notes. Me and Alistair, we're all in favour. Raise your hands. Yep. Gary. Right now, recommendation 2 really is we'll leave that live because we've done on that. And we will take a 2 to 3 minute break. Cheers.
Thank you. See you later.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you. Can you cut that off?
Stefan, can you just mute and turn off your video at your end, and I will trim the YouTube. Thanks.
Can you tell me if this has worked by just waving your hand?
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Good.
Right, we're unmuted and we're on video.
All right, guys, we're moving on. We're on to, what is it? The citizen report, section B, the Hinakura Road landslide. Do I have someone to move that we receive the report? I'll say that. I'll show you all in favour. All right. Right. Stefan.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. And in presenting this report, management is really looking for two things to happen. First of all, we have an urgent need to complete phase 1 of the Hinakura Road project. Phase 1 is the identification of a new alignment, because we all know that the current alignment that's being destroyed by the landslide is unusual and very likely to stay that way. So we're not able to use the present alignment of the road. So phase 1 is identifying that new alignment, doing the verification, the land slip, the geotech work to make sure that it's not vulnerable to earth movement of any type, and to get the engineered plans that will allow us to then go out and tender the job to build the road. So phase 1 is something that we don't have to tender. We can assign that work to WSP. They can take us through to the point where we've got engineered plans that we can then tender for the build of the road. Now, our suggestion is that you recommend $500,000 of unbudgeted expense. This is capital expenditure to allow us to move through to the end of phase 1. The second thing that we're asking today is that you recommend to council the use of up to $300,000 from the Rural Road Reserve for OPEX costs. Now, you can't use the Rural Road Reserve for CAPEX costs. That's why the first item is requested for an unbudgeted CAPEX expense. But you can use the Rural Road Reserve for OPEX. And there's two elements to that OPEX ask. One is the continued maintenance and improvement of the Admiral Hill route. Now that is, as you know, that's the only way out of Hinakura, in or out of Hinakura for the residents of Hinakura. It's very, very important that that road is continued to be maintained at a level that allows all traffic to use it. We've spent $65,000 already. We've been very busy on the road with 3 different crews doing different activity on the road. But we've got a few months ahead of us through winter that we will need that additional OPEX cost. So that's element 1. Element 2 is Mr. McCreary's suggestion of creating a temporary fund track through John Hancock's land and his land to ease the pressure on the Hinakura community. The suggestion, and Don is to speak to this a little later, is that a temporary fund track for 4-wheel drive vehicles is created and that the council partially funds that effort. Now, management is positive towards that suggestion. We want to be helpful, but we want to make sure that you councillors have an opportunity to fully explore what Mr. McCreary is suggesting on behalf of the Hinakura community. Look, I'll leave it there. Yep. I think that's the guts of it, and we might as well start into conversation.
Well, I guess there's different outline that the first recommendation is the $500,000 unbudgeted capital expenditure to allow the management to continue to work on new regional line. That's a must, in my view. So we will deal with that recommendation first. So that was, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jeppy. Look, I just wanted to get an understanding of the financial implications going forward about how do we fund this, and it's all very, oh, that's CapEx, OpEx. What does that actually mean practically, and how do we go about getting this money, and what does that mean for rates and so on and so forth? I agree that we have to do it, but I want to have an understanding, and so the public have an understanding about what this actually means going forward.
Okay, so we don't, as yet, we don't know what the total cost of the project is. So what will happen is, this is the first phase. Ultimately, once we know the full cost, then we would raise the loan, and on average it'll be a 30-year loan, because the life of the asset is 30 years. As a general principle, depending on how much the total loan is, if you take for every $1 million that council spends, it has roughly an $80,000 impact on our operating sheet, which is the cost of borrowing and the cost. Okay, so the problem is we don't know what the total cost is, but on the face of what we're asking you to do, that would have if you take it's $500,000, it would have a $40,000 impact in terms of operating account for a $500,000 loan.
And I should have said, Alistair, sorry, when we get to the end of phase one and we understand the total cost of the project and how it might be funded, we would of course be returning to council for a decision at that point and offering you all of that information.
And I appreciate that, thank you. If we say yes to this 500,000, are we taking a loan right now, or is that coming out of our bank account that have we got the funds literally in the bank to fund that, or are we going to be taking a loan effectively now? And if so, is there an implication to us paying that loan or interest on that loan with immediate effect?
If we take the loan now, I need to talk to Karen about when we would actually do this, because otherwise the costs will sit on our balance sheet. I'd be suggesting we take this loan and then depending on interest rates and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll have if we do, then we'll have a $40,000 impact on our operating account.
And what is that? What's the effect on that? And because we've literally just passed our annual plan with rating notices have gone out. What is the immediate impact upon that, or do we carry that debt for the next 12 months?
We carry it.
We carry it through to the next annual plan.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was going to ask much the same question as Alistair has done, but if you're not going to raise the loan immediately, where are you going to take the money from in the interim?
So I'm thinking we take the loan immediately.
So before you start any work at all?
We'll set up a cost centre and we charge them costs to it and then reimburse those from the loan.
Okay, so you're going to use reserves to cover
No,
that?
not reserves, no, it will sit against our operating account until we raise the loan.
And will they go the same for 300,000 as well?
No, that's
Mel, do you have a question?
Sorry, yeah, I did. Listen, this is because of what this is. Now, this is a major slip in major South Wairarapa District Council infrastructure that has failed, and therefore is isolating a group of Martinborough Ward locals who deserve access in and out. Now, one of the things that Kieran McNulty was on the front page of the paper 2 weeks ago saying that council hadn't asked for any or applied for any funding for loss of a road in a slip, which they have. So my concern would be, are we missing opportunities to actually engage with Waka Kotahi, where maybe they could utilise their engineers and their road experts? Are we by delaying that engagement?
Mel, that has been taken care of. I'll get Stephen on that, Harry to answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. Look, my understanding is that Mr. McNulty was mistaken in his comments in the media. I've checked with our roading engineer on our applications of Wapakatahi for funding support, and he's told me that the application was made on the 1st of July and has subsequently been approved by Wapakatahi, and the manager also brought the senior managers of Wapakatahi to the site and showed them the site in order to have them fully understand the damage and what we were spending our budget on. And so that's the preliminary application, and it was made very promptly and properly. So my understanding is that that's wrong.
Right. Thank you very much, Stefan. I really appreciate that, and thank you very much for obviously being all over this. As I say, it's a huge stressor at the moment within our community, and like Aidan said, there's over 70 residents affected. So we just want to ensure that council acts with urgency, like they would if it was someone, like if a road went in Martinborough and there were 70 people isolated, or Greytown or Featherston. So even if it wasn't a rural road, what I'm saying is this is infrastructure. This is South Wairarapa District Council infrastructure. These roads have been paid for by the ratepayers. So can we please move with urgency the recommendations around these budgets? I think looking and constantly questioning it, these are going to be the delays that will stall movement in this project. So yeah, thank you.
So Mel, you may not have been here when Aidan was presenting.
I've been here the whole time.
Okay, so we've set up a council meeting tomorrow to sign off on these recommendations if the council agree to them. So, we are going as promptly and as fast as we possibly can.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Harry.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mel. Just to reiterate what Harry just said, we have this at the forefront of council. We've had a lot of discussions, and we are moving as fast as we can. And this is why we want to get these recommendations through. Firstly, recommend to council that we approve the 500,000 unbudgeted. Do we have someone to move that? And also, we all in favour? Right. Now, the second recommendation, recommend to council that it approves the use of up to 300,000 from the rural road reserve to continue the maintenance and improvement on an alternative route to Hanakura via the Admiral, and to support the creation of a temporary farm track built by private landowners to reconnect the Hanakura community to the road on the Martinborough side of the hill. I guess this now is where we Stephanie start, and then we can.
Yeah, thank you. So through you, Chair, as I said earlier, this is there's two elements. The first is OPEX cost on the alternative route through Admiral Hill. We need to continue grading, metering, working on the pinch points so we can make sure trailers get through safe. We're widening out corners so trucks have got the right width for to make safe corners. We've got signage that we need to put up, especially on the stop paddocks where the roads go through. And this must continue all the way through the coming winter. So that's step one, and I think we've sort of given you as conservative figure as we can. But it will depend on what the decision is on how much to spend on farm track, which is the second item. We had advice when I wrote this report from Mr. McCreary that the budget was around 70,000. That may have shifted, and we'll be able to get new up-to-date information from Mr. McCreary when he talks about the build of the farm track. And I suggest we do that, perhaps.
Yes, so first, you all know what Don has suggested in terms of the farm track. On your stellar reports, you will have the outline of that. And I guess what we need to make clear that this is a track, it's not a road. So, because it isn't under guidance, I guess, but first we'll debate it. Now, do we have any questions of Don?
I think my main one, and I think it's absolutely fantastic that we have both Don and John Hancock's wanting to be right on board with this. But my main concern is accidents and health and safety of the people travelling on it, and where would that lie if something was to happen to anyone on the track?
So if it's a farm track, it was built on private land, it's not a road, all the liability does sit with the landowners. So council does not have any liability. So obviously if we were to provide funding, we'd want assurance that there's a management plan to manage the safety of people using the track. But but the responsibility is very clearly for workplace safety and health on a farm operator, a farm owner actually, to maintain safe tracks through the property. So it doesn't sit on council. Don, do you want to comment on that?
So hopefully Stephen might be able to back me up a bit, but we engaged our lawyer on this and I believe they helped maybe with advice around that it all leans on me. I've got public liability insurance, which I've provided to you guys, covers all of this. I've extended it to a what is it? Developers insurance, which covers roading and inviting people over those roads. So I've now got the full ability to be able to build a road and invite people to use it, and I've got cover for liability, and it's all lands on me with my insurance. That's why I had to sign documents with the neighbours and things to basically take it all on and get covered. So, and that's where I pitched it with council right at the start. It was never to be their liability, never to be the neighbours' liability. And I've also got the possibility that I can shift that to a society or a company that the community can own after or during the fact. They can purchase, they can take over the right away. Basically, I've got an access agreement that I'm able to create a right of way. So it's not formalised. It doesn't have to be surveyed, and unless I want it to be. But it's basically all over it.
So that's awesome, Don. But I guess another option is have you looked at only having it open during certain times? So then that way, I mean, if it's a farm track, it's probably going to be one way. So you get like to keep an eye on things like that, where you can have people going, over certain times, people coming back over certain times, or something like that. I know that other communities have actually done something similar when they've found themselves in a similar situation, because the joys of living rural New Zealand, this has happened before. And so have you played it all with that kind of thing, where it might be open for 2 or 3 hours earlier on in the day, and then you can close it up for your farming, and then because then it makes it so it's viable for the Hinakura residents, not necessarily for just people wanting to shoot through.
Yeah, so all over all of that. It's I've got the ability to do what I see fit and take the liability for that.
and that will involve the community and what they see fit, and and if council provide financial support for that, they could provide regulations, I suppose. I'm not sure of this.
A stop go. A stop go, something like that.
Just add to that, that's the point that worrying me is because if you get a contract there, rubberneckers are going down there having a look around. Now, my experience in the high country in the South Island, where there's a lot of tracks that create a shortcut or to get on the road, they have a lot going.
Yeah, I was probably going to.
And everyone who is able to use it, be your tradies, your sharing contractors, and your residents, have a key to that
I
game.
haven't priced it a lot on the prices.
Yeah,
that's basically.
At the end of the day, it happened, it operates very well on the market. And because
I guess the only reason I raise these is because I don't know if there's anyone out there I don't know, and I just I always think of health and safety for any of them when it comes to these roads. So yeah, thanks. I'll get off because there's other hands up.
Yeah, can I just add to that? So my road will be 20 times safer than travelling through the back road. Absolutely, way safer. So it's
awesome.
It's no other thing that I will create. Even if someone died on my road, there would have been more chance of them dying on the other road.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry to interrupt, but Garrick sent a message in the chat saying he was going to be back in 10 minutes. And I believe now we've lost quorum. Because you only have Jeppy, Pip and Alistair here. Am I correct in that?
And we're still fine to continue the conversation because we're not voting or anything at the moment. We're just having the conversation. But thanks. But I do notice that it's almost 3 p.m. So don't we have to call it now?
No. I think you're okay for time. If it goes over so many hours, then we do. But I don't think we're close to that as yet. Just wanted to check. I didn't want to. Okay.
Because that's after the emphasis.
Look, can I suggest we continue? And if necessary, we meet very quickly, the Assets and Services Quorum meets very quickly tomorrow to formalise recommendations. We haven't got a quorum now, but work on the assumption you have.
Okay, we'll go ahead on that assumption, and if we, Amy, could you find out exactly how many we need for a quorum? Because there's only 6 of them.
The terms of reference states 4.
Half plus 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
It states 4 members. That's what it says on the terms of reference.
So we've got it.
We're not voting at the moment. We'll carry on the discussion.
Garrick has just texted me. He's coming back right now.
Okay, great.
Good. Right. Okay, Alistair, you have a question?
Yeah, so I'd like to just make a couple of points, and this is, I suppose, to Mel and Aidan, but we are working as fast as we possibly can here. Asking questions about where the funding coming from is not slowing the process down. It's actually just good governance, because there are lots of ratepayers out there that want to know how we're funding this and what the impact is going to be and so on and so forth. And we totally sympathise for the 70 people out at Hinakura, absolutely, but the staff are working as fast as they possibly can to make arrangements, and Don's doing exactly the same thing on his property, so thank you for that. But the main part I want to raise is this recommendation 3. Stefan, I think we need to separate them into two parts. One is official use of money on the maintenance of Admiral Hill, and that is roading reserve money. The second part, which is for the temporary road through the landowner's property, is not a reserve issue, but it might come out of reserve, but it's more of a grant, because if we fund it deliberately, then to my mind, we are accepting responsibility, albeit part of it, as to the safety of that road. You can, Don may well have all the public liability he has, but human nature as it is, if something happens and we have funded it, you know where the finger's going to be pointed. So I think you just need to separate this out, one, to a grant, and I don't have a problem giving the money at all, but it's how we do it and how you do it creates our liabilities issues. I think
that was our intentions.
That's not how it's written.
So why don't we split this into two recommendations? One, we need to talk to understand from Donald's costs are, so you can actually understand what the proportionate amount for Admiral's Road and for the farm track are. So understand that, and then we have one bundle recommendation. One recommendation that relates to Admiral's Hill, and one that relates to a grant from the Roads Reserve to support the farm track. Yep.
That would make me much more comfortable, and the issue then is it's a grant to a farmer who's doing some local stuff, and that would have but you know, we would need to get legal. I presume, Harry, you've got advice on the liability for council as well, because it's an important issue that needs to be resolved.
Yeah, no, we will obtain legal advice, but it's very clear. Alice, actually, I do not consider we need legal advice. It is a farm track, but we're providing a grant with conditions that does not give us any legal accountability whatsoever.
Alice, that's in the report under 2.2 that it is a grant.
Yeah, but it's not because you've tied it all together into one recommendation. We need to separate them.
Yes, we'll do that.
Can I just make a comment? So I think you're on the right page doing that separate. So council contractors using farm tracks and things, how does that work with liability? You know, like they get consent to come and use our farm tracks. How does that work?
Tell me, you might be able to answer that.
So, you know, it's the same, I'm trying to sort of paint the same page. If you're worried about liability of funding something, if you're able to, I don't know, do something about farm tracks and then use them, how does that?
So to answer, but if any of our contractors enter private property, they have to comply with the conditions that are set by the person, the private landowner. You know, the same way that in terms of your farm, anyone enters your farm, you have to give them your health and safety briefing and all that stuff. So we have the same. That's exactly how it works.
Yeah. No, so I'm just trying to sort of hopefully that pushes back on the fact if you support this financially, hopefully you can call it what fits right without landing liability on the council. It's a similar situation, I believe. Like I'm sure what money gets spent on farming where the council needs access to a point, you know, they need access to a council.
Look, Don, I seriously, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with what you're proposing. It is very much just call it bureaucracy, which is my favourite word, as Harry will attest to. We need to know exactly which pile of money the money is coming out of and what it's for. And it's not like we're writing a blank check here. You know, you've asked for $70,000. That's fine. That then says to me there's $230,000 worth of money that can go towards the maintenance on Admiral Hill. And if you separate it out like that, I'm quite happy to go, yep, I recommend that.
Yeah, I guess we're probably at the stage now to draw up the recommendations.
So yeah,
well, that's fine. Okay, what I was going to recommend that we deal with the Admiral Hill first.
Well, I think it needs to deal with that. So it's being how much you've got.
Right, now you've all sent staff report questions. I guess we need to make a decision on how much we are going to grant.
So I can't vote on this committee because I'm not on that. But can I make a suggestion? Is that is the new, the figure that Don's quoted is non-economical, however, it is over above the original 70,000. I would suggest that we put a cap on there now, and cap should be at 100,000.
Right. That
Just on that, if you could forget my original thing was told in a speech at the Hunakura thing, it was totally off the cuff estimate, and I clearly pointed that out, just from a contractor conversation on the phone, detailing out figures and things. So then since then, it's a proper analysis and proper pricing. I've just received more backup quoting sort of thing.
We just have to have a cap on it.
Yes, yeah.
We have to have a cap.
I accept that.
Just the open check.
And I accept that figure in terms of I'll price my time in there, and I don't want that back. I just want to acknowledge, like, I believe I'm worth double that, like, for what I'm carrying out. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I can back that up.
Yeah, that's on it. If we put a cap and say it's 100,000,
yeah,
can you live with that?
Yes, again, yeah.
Yes.
So, sorry, I just think it's important that councillors consider the situation where council puts 100,000 into the venture, but then for whatever reason the track isn't completed. It may be that Don, there could be a lot of reasons why it isn't completed. Don may be looking for funding from elsewhere to complete the project and isn't able to achieve that. So I note that because I think it's a sensitivity for councillors that you might want to explore.
Yeah. So it would be a condition, obviously, a cap of 100,000. Well, conditions, subject to conditions. So.
Yeah. Derek, I need to hear from a whole lot of you.
Yep. I'm just adding on to that point. If there's more than 70,000 required, do we have to come back through this? Can we not put some sort of plus or minus at the end for a contingency? I mean, I don't want the work to start and then stop, but I think we want to keep going. So can we put a contingency or something in there so we don't have to come back to another meeting?
Gary, what position, what I was hearing was that a cap of capped at 100K. So you can't have a cap and a contingency. So you've got to make a decision on what you want to do.
Okay, that's fine. So long as he knows what he's working to. That's all right.
Well, what Colin just discussed with Don, the original quote was around 70. It's now gone to 118. Or quite.
Yes.
So we're Don's quite happy to accept 100 grand, but what we're saying, we want a cap on it and we want a condition on there that if it's not used, or if it don't go ahead, it's come back to council.
Yeah, okay. Well, so yes, conditions, like give me conditions for the thing, can be one for sure. I really need to see, and I think you guys should agree with that. I mean, my wording in there says so, that, like it's I need to see where the council's road would be completed or could be completed, not like I accept, that you can't put dates on things like that, but I would be, I'd be crushed to go and build this road and then 3 months later we've got a main road through it. I think we've had discussions that that's not going to happen. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be crushed when we start. We've got a road in 3 months, but I'd be.
I can't quite hear you, Don. I can't quite hear what you're saying.
The question that may not have been heard by the online participants was, Don was asking, how long is it going to take us to build the permanent road? Because that's a very pertinent point for him. If it's going to take us a couple of months, then he's probably better off not building this farm track. If it's going to take us 6 months or more, then it's definitely worth it. And so he was asking that question of us. Now, it's a good question. It's very hard to answer. My answer to Don in private conversations has been, don't expect a new road in place before Christmas. It could well take longer than that. And I'm afraid that's as precise as I can be at the moment. And that's the only advice that I can offer.
Sorry, follow on to that. How long or when would you expect to keep your farm tractor in place?
Yeah, so firstly, like it's probably not to get the full access from, it's for us to be able to use the council's access. So you might be able to use that while they're still sealing and things, but is there any shorter part like to that? I thought when would we get four-wheel drive access over the council's road?
Look, I strongly suspect that you won't be able to use the road while it's being built.
Yeah. And then, yeah, how long? So, given my initial thing, so just an email in. Sorry guys, I'm just grabbing my computer. My initial thing was 7 days to bulldoze it, and then immediately get things. But that if we do it in sections, we could do it at the same time, which is still the case. It's probably 10 days bulldozing, but you see, being held up is what, like, I don't know, like, something's trying to break me here because we had 10 days fine weather, like just been. I got held up. We'd have a road right now if I was just a farmer that owned the whole thing, and we just banged the road and I didn't worry about the consents that I hadn't needed anyway and all that sort of thing. And we had a road, but we've got a fine run.
We have been working with,
yeah, it's not from you.
With your lawyer and with the Greater Wellington Council to remove, to expedite that question of consents. And the answer from us is that no consent is required. And we've learned recently that the answer from Greater Wellington Regional Council is that no consent is required. So yeah, you've got a green light in terms of regulation.
Sorry, yeah, just to be clear, the one from GLC said no, as long as it does not go sort of stream.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. He's aware that there's nothing up there. I'm aware there's nothing up there. And yeah, so green light to me in terms of knowing where I stand for if I'm in breach of that. So yeah, and fully so nothing's angled at anyone for holding the arm. It's a various or whatever situation that's just screwed us all over. And you know, it's probably right now we've got people in tears down in the valley, and no one probably knows, but I just lost a fucking house last night down in my week because we're going to be in, and you got the fire services, 5 or 6 trucks turned up through the thing, and they were all, a couple of them commented like they were going to go to the bank and things. So yeah, like it's I'm not sure where that stands. Like my access thing wouldn't exactly fix that, but yeah.
I mean, first of all, I must say that I heard that there was that fire overnight, Don, and our sympathies to you for that. And no one wants to see a home they own burnt to the ground like that. And just thank God no one was in the property, no one was hurt. But nevertheless, it's a really traumatic event for you. So I just want to acknowledge that. But I think the question that was asked of you, we might have just lost track of it, was in rough terms, how long do you think it will take you to build your farm?
So there's, I'll just open these up. I believe there's 10 days digger and excavation work. Sorry, it's got 3 days, both machines. So that's, I think it's 10 days each, so they'll be working at the same time. I believe we get the dirt work done in 10 days, but we need 10 fine days and to be measuring at the same time, because we've got one shot at it over winter where we open up the ground and go through. So you sort of need to open up a section and then do it at the same time. And yeah, so I presume, 12, 14 days, it would be completed of fine, of good going, and we're almost got to work the it's probably 60, 80 mils, and if you do that, I haven't had a second cheaper gauge, to be honest, so, but yeah, if.
And it'll only take you a day because the gauge will post it.
Yeah.
I'll help you with the Alistair, but
Yeah, thank you. Don, have you got any idea about the usage on it, sort of how many vehicles a day, that sort of thing that are going to come onto it? And before you answer that, but I hope Tim's listening, because I'd like to get an idea from Tim about the ability of the road that you're designing to cope with that ongoing, because the road that the council is going to build, as Stefan said, it's not going to be 6 months, it's not going to be 12 months. We all know it's going to be a lot longer. By the time we buy land and redesign a road and build it, we don't build anything fast in this country, and it's just not going to happen. So we need to know that this road's going to be suitable probably for at least 12 months. And I would suggest that's probably a really good case. So the amount of traffic that's going on it, and what's its life likely to be, I suppose, in your workings.
Yeah, Tim might be able to add in our initial data on the use of the Hinakura Road, the one that has been damaged by the landslide, was roughly 100 vehicles a day. And most of those vehicles were heavy use vehicles, actually. So 100 vehicles a day, and most of them heavy use. So that's, I think, Tim, from memory, that was the approximate road toll that we had on it.
You don't know the life job.
So are you there? Yeah, look, I'm fairly.
I'm here.
There is.
Yeah, I think those figures were pretty accurate. We hadn't done a count for a while, but yeah, it'd be a pretty even split between heavy and light vehicles.
So 50 a day of light vehicles, would that be?
Yeah. But if it's only open to residents and that kind of stuff, then that will diminish significantly.
Yeah, so I would like so that's where I'm getting squeezed from every angle. Like like even the sort of talk like the funding thing. If people are straight up with me and we need this thing for a year and a half, or everyone's being straight up with me, but if we do that for a year and a half, maybe you put that in your funding thing that there's an ongoing support of that. So I'm squeezing down on things because I'm building it for 6 months, like particularly the metalling, like the base course metalling, which is really important to setting up the road. I've just spent the last 3 days hunting around bloody 10 different sites of metal, trying to get the cheapest, closest option and cutting corners because of this, so if I can, and that's, I believe I've priced in, what have I priced in for metal? I might have priced in the better option, so I would rather have the funding to do it. So
you've got $6,000 a quarter for metalling after it's been built as well. I'm trying to ascertain as to what's the ongoing cost going to be either to you, or you're going to be coming back for more money or that sort of thing, because we really need to know up front what it's going to cost. It's not an issue of is the money there. It's actually how much do we need to put aside to make sure that this is kept open for potentially 18 months.
Yeah, so I believe I've priced things as they are, like not getting carried away, having a four-wheel drive access, 15 degree gradient at the greatest. It won't be over that. Is that ring any bells, or like 12 or some truck and trailer, I think. you know, I believe the road you might be creating would be 12, but sealed probably, I don't know. And so this will be gravel at 15 with 4-wheel drives is easy, you know, like, and it's, it'll be safe at that. And I believe I priced it within, to get the job done at 100 and, I'll put 118,000 down, it won't go above that. And of course, I'm not looking for the funding to spend a lot. Like I would be still pricing things, getting it right. I would like to, that there should be that maintenance, quarterly maintenance I put in, and that's me estimating a bit from knowing metalling prices and just saying a digger if there's damage to the table drains and things. So so quarterly, yeah, pricing. So that's just to cover if it goes on for 2 years that we're going to keep the seat
Just
up.
on that, Johnny, if it does go on for a while and you need more money for maintenance, is there an appetite for the community to pitch into this is what Alice is related to. We want to set a figure now, and we don't want to be having to see it come back and apply for more.
So the maintenance, I would like to see funded as well, and the community
on top of the 100,000.
Yes, like and so we could. I mean, could you, like that's a question I suppose. Like could you fund the grading cost as you are, and then the maintenance? I mean, does that come under if your contractors are allowed under the private access to carry out their
accountant were a little bit more grey area. If we are said to be doing maintenance, are we limited by the
you're doing that.
The maintenance, not the funding, the maintenance after the road is.
Yeah, I understand that, but we'd have to go through something like a grant.
Because sorry, have you ever maintained a farm track because your contractors had gone and clean out that drain? It is yeah. That's the same, isn't it?
No, yeah, yes.
So what are you thinking the maintenance cost is?
So I've got it here, 6,000 of meatling and 2,000 for a digger quarterly, so every 3 months, is it? But that's over estimation of, I believe. It's just if we end up with this road for 2 years, I'm covering that basis, you know. Like,
You're the worst case scenario.
yeah. Even with all of this, I hope this is worst case, but if we don't, like I say, if I don't do that, then I'm going to be coming back and going, well, I can't build this thing, we're buggered, you know, like,
I suppose the question was, you know,
Could we ask Tim?
Can
Can we get Tim to give us a bit of advice?
We're just trying to clarify something and then I'll come up.
yeah, no, the question is, you know, so is the community wanting to take into its box as well?
they want to see council support for it. So, yeah.
So when the council said, oh, we're going to put in 100K, it's taxed, and the community goes on 6,000, 5,000.
So I put a survey out to community, and most of them haven't answered on that basis that they want to see what council have got, and I haven't presented them properly. So and for very good reason, like for the right reasons, because I believe we've achieved. The community has achieved the ability to get this access through me, but and I don't believe that we would have got that ability. So like otherwise, so
You're saying if you didn't drive it, no one else would.
that and yeah.
Right, okay, so we'll move on, but yeah. Tim and then Mel.
You like saying that, AGP? No, so I just wanted to really quickly say, look, I'm looking at these prices. I've already said that, like, you know, the fact that you're looking at building something that will actually still be safe, and you know, looking at all of that as well. I had read your report and saw that it wasn't 70k, that it was at 118, plus an additional 8,000 on top to look after the maintenance, because until it starts being used, we don't know how often that maintenance needs to be done. And so for me, I'd rather just look at putting 150,000, you build that road, you have that additional amount quarterly that's built in, that then gives us it helps us as a council to continue with our work on getting that road built. And you have that funding there that you can then tap into, and anything that's left over when we open our road can come back to council. How does that sound? Hey. I'm just trying to cover everything, because every single day, all of those pricings for building anything is going up. So we don't know how much. Like, I know you've done some awesome work there, Donnie, with those prices, but they could be changing all the time. So I mean, I really want to keep that in mind. I remember when we built the Waihinga Centre, and that we ended up having to go back to the table to put in an additional amount because costs, in case of costs increasing. I don't want to see that happen here. I know how important it is to get this done, so that way people have access out. So I'm just trying to like kind of really. And that's just me throwing something on the table, and I'm more than happy to hear what anyone else thinks about that. But I'm just like, you know, I'm hearing what you're all saying, and this is kind of where I've ended up with my thoughts. So I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I do think that we need to put it through so it can come to the council table tomorrow.
Yeah, well, that's so. Mel, did you have a comment? You had your hand up.
Look, I did just have a comment, and I think council needs to understand how the luxury and how lucky they are to actually have somebody like Don, who is actually doing all the legwork. He's not only that, but he's engaged in offering parts of his own land and farm, separating it out for the betterment of his community, which is brilliant and should be the type of behaviour that South Wairarapa prides itself on. Now, what Don is trying to be as cost, friendly, I guess, to you guys as he possibly can. But Stefan, as the person who wrote the recommendations and things, and I think that's why it says up to 300,000. It goes between the two, and I think that it's going to be that continual repair, whether it's the Admiral Road or working on that will need to be done. And so if that's 300,000 across both, that should provide sufficient for Donnie to get the track supporting four-wheel drives, and sufficient for Admiral Road to be repaired to a state that they can still get all of their trucks in, because Admiral Road is going to be the only way that heavy trucks and things can get in, and they are urgent. They urgently require them for all of their businesses. So, I think it's going to need repair, because the minute you've got heavy traffic going on any road, let alone a terrible rural road, it's going to deteriorate at a really fast rate. So I think probably that's a conversation between South Wairarapa and Carterton, that maybe, but I think South Wairarapa does need to bear a lot of that cost, because it's going to be our users using that road more frequently.
Thanks, Mel. Look, Tim, could you make add anything to the ongoing maintenance of this track?
It depends on the standard it's built to initially. If it's built to a standard which can take the loading of utes on a steep grade, and four-wheel drives and drainage correct, maintenance should be minimal.
In the interest of moving things forward, because remember we're going to have a council meeting tomorrow to sign this on. So it gives a chance for people to think over it. What I'm going to suggest is, and this is literally a school hack, is that you approve 100k capped for the cattle works, and 200k for the Admiral's Road, we separate to conditions, right? So we have one that's 200k for Admiral's Road, and the grant with subject work conditions relate to the capital site. But I leave an opportunity, and this is my straw man, is that we consider a 50-50 split with the community on maintenance. So, in other words, the community contributes 50% of the cost to the maintenance program, and we subsidise the, we provide a grant to the other 50%. Just bring it up to straw man, because I think it's important the community, the city councils is paying for all of it. We recognise absolutely the different communities in those types of things, but after the road goes in, there's still a private benefit on.
No, there's not. There's nothing. Because we don't want this road through this land.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to go really strongly on that, there's no. I was going to swear, but there's no way I want a road. I wanted a road past my wool shed. There's no way. I just bought this property, and it's putting a road past my wool shed. But I'm open to that because.
I'm just putting your hand up now, so I've got your time. Don, if we're council,
please put the whole thing through. I mean, it's benefit. Look at it. First here, it's all detailed out there.
Look, we go on our time, Sam. We need to get something done very soon. And what Harry's suggesting is a referendum. We aren't signing off on this.
Yes.
We're recommending.
Hang on, Amy's got her hand up, so I think it's the meeting time.
I said, sorry. Amy?
The break that we had earlier was less than 10 minutes, and the standing orders state that we need to either make a resolution to extend the meeting. And then Harry also sent me a message saying that you'd suspended standing orders, but you also need a motion for that. With at least 75% of the members to pass it. So yeah, I just throwing it out there to you what you want to do next with that, because we have to do one or the other.
I'm suggesting we wrap this up, that we get something on the table that council can make a decision on tomorrow. Yeah. But so all the things that we're going to make my announcements. Yeah. Right.
Can I just ask, when you finish speaking, Harry, can I just ask that one question, please?
Yeah. So what I'm going to suggest is that we make two recommendations to and the first is that we approve 200,000 for the road reserve for Admiral's Road. We approve capital expenditure of $100,000 towards the farm track. And we add another resolution that says our council consider funding or making a contribution to maintenance costs.
Fully funding or making a contribution. And I think that option that Harry suggested in terms of that drafting is really important, because councillors, when they meet tomorrow, may consider that a community that's already under very significant stress and having to reach into their own pockets for a whole lot of other expenses already, asking them to contribute again to the maintenance of the farm track might just be a bridge too far. So I think, Harry, it's a very good idea to have a second option, and either or for councillors to ponder tomorrow.
Yes, and if we have libraries,
especially because he's, but Donny's statement had said 118, so you're already asking him to start paying 18,000. So I just think that, to me, I don't think that that's a good split, because you're talking about the difference between building something that's accessible for light traffic to a road that's already there and just doing some maintenance on it that belongs to Carterton. So I'm a little bit confused onto how that split works.
Well, can I just enlighten you a little bit? Before Donny, or just as Donny sat down, a question was asked of Donny, would 100,000 do it? And his answer was yes. So we're working on that basis at the moment. Now,
that's please though. Why are we taking it as a yes when that's not what his quote said?
We said that to try and speed the whole process up. Donny accepted that was a fair figure. We are now debating around the maintenance. But as Harry just pointed out, and I've said before, this is a recommendation to full council. We have all councillors debating it tomorrow. So the figure may go to 120, who knows? The decision may be 90.
Yeah, that's true, Jeppy, sorry, that is true, it's got to come through the council. So yes, you're quite right.
Hang on, please. We have to get a recommendation to council tomorrow. We want this to happen the day after tomorrow. Donald needs certainty that he's going to get the funding. The finer details, we can actually discuss that until the cows come. But we need time to think about it tonight. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow and we're going to sign off on it. Donald, are you happy in that process?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, Jeppy. I just think that the recommendation's light. I just think the recommendation's light, and I'd like to see that changed. The recommendation that we make to council covers the figure that was given. So, you know, do that 120.
We're running out of time. Alistair? We're ready for a motion here.
Yeah, mine's very quick, Jeppy, and thank you, Harry. I completely support the idea of 200,000 and 100,000. My only question is, can we give a grant out of the rural roading reserve, or do we have to get it from a different particular thing?
This is rural roading reserve. If you read it, it's on the paper that the money's to come out of the rural roading reserve.
But that's my question. I don't think there's anything in the rural roading reserve that allows us to give a grant.
We'll sort that out.
Because you said it's capital. You said it's capital as well, so it's a capital grant. So you need to work out where it's going to come from. And Donnie, that's bureaucracy. Sorry, not for you. But I'm happy with 100,000. We just have to work out where it's coming from.
We just need to move this forward.
We need to move it real forward, Pam. One quick one, and then we're going to read it to
I just want to clarify. Suggested a figure of 150, and when I worked that out, that would be that figure of 150 is 180,000, which is what John is asking for now, plus 1 year's maintenance of 8,000 by 4 quarters. So if you were saying that you're going to use that rate for approximately 1 year, then the total cost for council would be 150,000 for 1 year's maintenance on the roading and 1 year one year's maintenance on the track and one actual building of the track itself. So that is what I was going to clarify those figures for, to give you an idea, in which case we would only be paying out the 118 to start off, and we'd still keep the 32,000 in the roading reserve.
Dispersed as needed.
Dispersed as needed.
right. Now, I'll say it again, we're running out of time. Now, all we're doing is putting a recommendation to council. We're going to have the night to think about it. The figure might change. We need to get the recommendation to council. But you're going to have the opportunity tomorrow to discuss this with all councillors around. What do you want me to do? Make a recommendation. We just have an open checkbook. We've got to put a figure on something. We've got to have a starting point.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I've done the same workings as Pam, so that's why I was sitting there at the same thing. So I mean, I don't know. It's just to make the recommendation. I absolutely agree with you, Jeppy. Where do you want to go with the recommendation? Are we going to sit at 100, or are we going to sit at make the recommendation 150?
We're going to get that. So we've got a consensus now. We're going to put a recommendation forward to go to the council meeting tomorrow. Are people happy with that? We'll now get the wording for the recommendations, and the recommendation. Let's take a while to drag up. The first one is to recommend $200,000 for Admiral's Road from the roading reserve. Right now, Alistair move that. We have someone to second that. Gareth, we're all in favour. Right. Now, the second recommendation is, and you just said it before, Harry. What was it?
So I'm suggesting the third recommendation about maintenance. So this is towards the capital works. I'm recommending we put forward 100K capped for the capital works. Yeah, and then we have a third recommendation, which which council considers fully funding or partially funding the maintenance costs for buildings.
Yep. Now, you're happy with that? It is a starting point. It will alter. Gareth, would you like to move those two recommendations? We have a second. Alistair, all in favour of those recommendations? Aye. Gareth. Right.
And there's two other, so there's two other notes there.
Yeah, right. Just to finish it all.
I'm happy to note 4 and 5.
20,000 emergency unbudgeted expenses from council operating expenditure has been approved by the chief executive to establish the Hinakura Road Relief Fund. Number 5, note the rebuild of the Hinakura Road will be a capital project that is anticipated to be alone funded over 30 years to turn the average life of the road. Alistair, thank you. I will second that. We're all in favour of those notes. Aye. Eric.
I do have something to say with regards to Hinakura before we finish, and I do apologise. I just know that I thought it was through our emails today, but it was actually on the Facebook page for South Wairarapa District Council. There's wellness clinics that are being sent around the district by Health New Zealand who were at the meeting, the public meeting. And I just wanted to say, I did see that there was an email through to Shield about some of the kids wanting to have flu jabs and adults getting the kids getting their second COVID jabs and things like that. And was it possible for something to be set up at the Hinakura Hall? And so I'd just like to see, because one of the things that Aidan, when he spoke, was about wellness of all of the community that's out there. Is it possible that the council can just go and go back through to them and ask them if they're able to also set up one of the events? I know there's one at the Martinborough Library, and I also see that there's one out at Waimeha Camping Village, so it's going out rurally out there. Is it possible for them to go to Hinakura as well?
So we're in discussions with Health about that as we speak.
Excellent. Excellent. I think it's really important because, you know, just covering the health and well-being of everyone.
There's a whole lot of things going on to really support the community. So we're doing anything we can put through, we're trying to do what we can. Yep.
Right. And how long have we got, Amy?
Sorry, the other thing we do need to do is have a motion that we respect the motion that we suspended standing orders for this item to allow them to participate in the discussion.
And I will move that we suspend standing orders, and Alistair will second it, and we're all in favour of that. Do you have any?
Hang on, I've got to be out of here by 4. We're going to be here all day.
I'm going to be hopefully 7 minutes. Right, we need to move on. B3 recommendation from Federalist Community Board. Thanks, Don.
Do you want to make any issue with extend?
Yeah, right. Someone like to move that we receive the recommendation from the Federalist Community Board first up. Alistair and Garrett, secondly. To consider the recommendation from the community, Federalist Community Board, and
to recommend to council to approve a Nuku wide pilot project subject agreement for development of FEMA.
Yeah, and I will move that we have a second. Thanks, Garrett. We all in favour of that recommendation from the Federalist Community Board? Say aye. Thank you. Garrett, you have a point? Question? You have our hands up.
I have my hand up. I just want to quickly say I was at the meeting and totally support this and the recommendations that goes back to the standing Maori Standing Committee. So Featherston is basically supporting the approach for the whole cycle trail, and I think it's a good move. But we are doing it through the Maori Standing Committee, making sure they're on our team. So yeah, 100% in favour.
Right. Information report, we've done all that.
We just take the wording.
Yeah. Otherwise, move that we take the wording and the ministers' report as read. Me and Alice will second that, we're all in favour. Aye, carried. Now, action items report. Those as read. Shall we take those as read? I have got a couple of points, but I will pick them up with staff later on. So I will move the action item report as read. We have a second of that. I'll take that.
Gary's got a second.
Gary, we're all in favour. Aye, Gary.
Chair, sorry, I'm very sorry, but I would like to just say one thing about the voting report. I know everybody's dying to get away, but look, Tim Langley and the team at Burramanga Roads have landed a $4 million roading program this year, right on the money, right within 1% of the Whakatane budgets. And they have done an enormous amount of work across the network this year in the face of a lot of adversity, COVID and the teams, rising costs, terrible weather, and as well as the $4 million of roading, he has responded to several large weather events which have really stressed the team. And I don't want us to leave the room today without noting that, because it is a really great outcome. And thank you, Tim and the team.
Well done, Tim.
Okay. Alice, are you have something to say? Apart from here.
Yes, I do. Yeah, just one very, very quick question. Action item 254. What is it and where did it come from?
What was that?
Action item 254. What is it and where did it come from?
Oh.
I don't recall anything on it. It's the Matariki funding. I don't know anything about that. I can't recall anything.
Alice, the date's wrong. It's for 2023 because some of the applications we're going through before the end. So we're not talking about February 2022. We're talking about February 2023, as I understand it. I know that helps.
But what's it about?
Oh, there are funding applications which can go through to support Matariki.
Yeah, so what was happening, and Gary will remember this, what was happening was they actually, to be able to apply, anyone in the South Wairarapa or anywhere, applications had to be in by the end of February, or it was super early in the year. And we weren't aware of when the funding that was coming out for Matariki was. And so it was missed out last year for the council or anyone to make a move. So this is just so that way it stays on the radar. So we don't miss it for any funding next year.
Yeah, just change the year to 2023 and we're right.
Thank you.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've updated that action actually since this report went out, and we've added it to our work plan and we've identified the funding source, and if anything changes, we'll sort it out. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Now, would someone like to move that we go into public excluded?
I'll just put this on here and I just.
If you need to kick that thing out.
Yeah.
I'll move it, second that. We have Alistair. We're all in favour. Aye. Right. We need to